This is G Bass with the Rise of the 1% podcast, and I'm definitely back for another episode. But I'm excited today. I got a friend of mine, a brother of mine, for over 10 years here in the studio. Stop by to have a drink with me, and actually as well have a real conversation. And so with that said, I want to welcome to today's Rise of the 1% podcast episode, none other than my brother, Ray Arnold. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so, Ray, definitely glad to have you on the podcast today, my brother. I know we're going to have a real conversation. I'm excited to have it. What I want to start off with first, though, Ray, is start off with a little bit of your story. That's what I want to start off with first. So, first of all, Ray, you actually was born in New York, am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Talk a little bit about that.
So I was living with my grandmother. So my mom moved out here to Atlanta, Georgia, like in the early 90s and stuff. So she had to kind of figure out her own way. She probably I think my mom probably like 20 years old or whatever. And so I didn't come down to Georgia until I was like 3 years old. So I do remember, bits and pieces of being with my grandmother and my grandfather up there. But I was actually in Bridgeport, Connecticut, actually.
Okay.
I was born in New York, but I remember living in Bridgeport, though.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And pretty much you was raised here, though, in Georgia, primarily.
Yeah, mainly raised in Georgia, yes.
Gotcha.
Pretty much all I know.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I want to start here as well, Ray. So I know, of course, me and you, we primarily connected in network marketing. And so I know your story has always been you started off sweeping floors at Coast, and then you was introduced to network marketing. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I kind of found myself in when I would say I was 23 at that time. I found myself in a crazy situation because I say that because I was making about $7.35 an hour. I was working at Kohl's. I was working, in the back in the shoe department or whatever. So at the time, I knew that hey, I wasn't making enough to even get a car. At the time, I didn't have a car or whatever. So I just didn't want to get another job. That's the crazy thing. Gotcha. I didn't want to get another job because I knew I was gonna have to do more. Yeah. And it'd be more pressure or whatever. So I don't know what I was waiting on. I was just kind of like going around just kind of like listless a little bit, or whatever, no real purpose or whatever. And so I seen Chad had been doing network marketing for a while, for at least 2-3 years at that point, 2 years at that point. And he was making six figures. I was seeing his checks at 20,000, 30, 40, 50,000. Yep. And to me, it was just numbers on the screen in the beginning. Like I didn't even believe it. It just was numbers on the screen that I was seeing. But, what changed everything was when I seen that, he had a house. He was 21 years old, owned the house, bought the house, owned the house, had the brand new BMW outside. He was traveling, 2-3 times a month, going out of town. I'm over here scratching I'm trying to figure out how to get out of my mom's house, how to get a vehicle. Yeah. And so I finally conceded. I was so frustrated, after I got my first raise at that job that I went to his office. I remember I went to his crib, we went to the office, we talked, and I just said, man, put me down. And I didn't have the money. The crazy thing is the opportunity at the time was like $40. I didn't have the 40 to do it. He had to give me $20, you feel me, so I could bridge over to the next check. Yeah. And so just so you know, because I don't want you guys to think I'm stupid or anything, but why wouldn't I join my best friend that's making all this money and I'm just not doing it? I didn't understand it, I didn't see nothing like it. I didn't understand it. To me, it's like you got people paying $500 to do it. $500, I can give you 2 ounces. Like that's serious. Like I smoke. If I give me 2 ounces. Yeah. I take them 2 ounces out, and I can move this in about a week. And pay for my habit and make some money. Yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, I don't understand that. So why are people giving you money? You gotta understand like the person I knew at that time, he acted like the person he wanted to be until he became that person. So I'm just thinking the person that, we partied and grew up with or whatever. Yeah. So people, Mr. Thompson, like I wasn't used to all that. So, but I don't get me wrong, I respected it. I wanted it for myself. So it did take me a minute to kind of like, it all kind of clicked together to where it was a time where even when I was doing that, I wasn't making no money, you know, doing network marketing and stuff. And I remember like being at his crib, looking around like damn, I ain't gonna get none of this if I don't figure this out. You know, I remember because I can't, in my mind, I don't see a way of paying for all this. Not with a job. I don't see it. I just don't. And I know there's people out there that got jobs that do pay for it. I ain't knocking nobody with no job, you know, or whatever. I had a job myself. Yeah. I just couldn't personally figure out a way to get that with a job. I just couldn't see it. Yeah. So that's what kept me motivated when I wasn't making no money or whatever. So I would say, you know, when I finally caught a break was a transition from that same company, that same 5 Links company. I think we both was in it.
Yeah, we were
or whatever.
Absolutely.
And so I do remember it was one time, you know, I think I hit ED real fast.
Yeah, you did.
And we was at the, it was at Pascal's. It was an event that Gerald was doing.
Yep.
And so I remember like, okay, so I was like, you know, I hit me some ranks. I was ready for my award and go out there and speak. And then Gerald called Jay Morgan and somebody else up there. I was like, what the? You know, I ain't gonna lie. I was like, and don't get me wrong, I no hate or nothing like that, you know, but still I was like, all right, you know, I was like, all right, damn, you know, I did kind of feel a certain type of way. Yeah. So, you know, I knew I had to go back. And at the time, I hit ED, but you already know I wasn't making no money, you know, at the end of the day. So it's not like I had a check to go back and be excited about or nothing like that. I had to motivate, you know, self-motivate. You know, I had to switch up a lot of stuff. Hell.
And let me stop you there, right? Because one thing you may not know is I brag on you all the time to this day. To like people that I work with in business, to even sales. Antonio that's filming this, he'll tell you. I brag on you all the time. And what I mean by that is when we was in 5 Links, like you say, I may not necessarily get an award at that time. I can't recall what I may not have. But what I will say is your work ethic.
He ain't know I was going to throw that one in there. We ain't talking about that.
Your work ethic.
But nah, Joe my boy, man.
Oh, yeah, you already know, bro. But your work ethic, Ray, I tell people all the time, I would call because you assigned some people up the day before, and I call your phone the next morning. Like, really wanting to congratulate you on the sign-ups, and Ray, your phone be going straight to voicemail, and you may call me back an hour later, hour and a half, 2 hours, and you're like, bro, I'm in here making calls, right? You was getting to it. Your work ethic was on a whole other level. That was in the beginning, right? Even though 5 Links compensation plan was broken, we weren't being rewarded for the work like we should have been.
Not at all.
But, bro, you always had that work ethic.
Not at all, and I appreciate you saying that. And so, like I said, Joe was my boy. He ain't know I was going to toss that in there. But when he called me about this podcast, it was no-brainer. You know, it took a month because we was both busy being in and out of town. But it was no-brainer we was going to do this, you know. So that's just a respect I got for G, you know, for even having me on here. Yeah. But, I mean, like I said, it came from once I seen it all as possible. Once I seen, okay, you can actually do this. It's people that's looking like me that's doing this. It's not just Chad. Right. Y'all got to understand, too, why I didn't do this stuff. Chad was always that lucky ass. Y'all got to understand that. Like, when we grew up, Chad always had that luck. I don't know what it's called, but whatever people want to call it, but he's always had that, like, he's always had that edge over everybody. Yeah. So that was, like, expected. You know what I'm saying? So nobody competed with it. You just let them have it or whatever. Yeah. You know, and so just because Chad's doing something, it's just like, man, that's Chad, you know? Like, and I hate to keep throwing his name out there like that, you know? But I ain't talking nothing about good stuff. But long story short, that was him. You feel me? That's him doing it or whatever. And so that was another reason. But when I seen it all as possible, really what kind of changed everything for me is, man, I ain't never flown on a plane. It took me to 24 years old to fly on a plane. So when I flew on a plane in New York for Wake Up Now, which was a company, that's when I kind of caught my first big break. So I guess I'll back it up a little bit. And so I got involved in 5 Links after MCA, a company called MCA, $40 to get in, and you get paid $80 or whatever, you know, just by getting somebody to pay $40. So you can really kind of come up on some money. So I joined 5 Links, and I think my first month I put in one person, like literally put in one person. I remember thinking like, yeah, you ain't gonna hit nothing with one person a month. That's just piss poor. You know? I was like, I ain't going nowhere. So that's the first thing I was thinking. So I was like, I gotta switch. You know, and so I think the next month, I think I probably got like 3 people or whatever. I don't know, but it could have been like 3. And so improvement, yeah, you know. So obviously, what happened is I got more comfortable having the same conversation. So, but you know, I think month 3, I think I may have put in like 6 people that month. And you gotta just understand, you know, this is 5 links. It's $500 plus all these fees to get in. So 4 or 5 people a month. You know, that back then, that's a straight month. You know, y'all gotta understand. It's not nowadays where you're putting in, you know, 3-4 people a day and 10 people a week. This was a different time back then. And so I wasn't making no money. So, you know, that kind of was a thing, but I seen something though. This is the crazy thing, y'all. So it's 2 things I seen. So when I started doing network marketing, I came in at the time where you just started being able to post a picture from your phone to Facebook. You know, and Instagram just came out. You used to have a computer to do that. But now it's on your phone. Now everybody didn't have a smartphone at that time. But when I got involved or whatever, more and more people was getting smartphones. So long story short, you know, I came in at a good time because all the stuff that you could do marketing back then, you can't do now. You know, and so that is another thing that got me. You used to be able to post all this money and cars and stuff. And you had 20 signups a day back then. You know, literally 20 signups a day. And now you can't do that no more. People they don't care about you because everybody's doing it. So, but before, like, it got so much attention just doing that, you know? And so, and don't get me wrong, the industry has progressed, but long story short, you know, so I get into this Wake Up Now company or whatever from 5 links. But as I'm getting in, I'm realizing, okay, I need people, I need leaders because I need leaders. So then I thought about it and I'm like, all right, this is before Chad even told me. And I'm like, I might as well keep going to the 5 links meetings. And I might as well just see who would like to do Wake Up Now. So that's the first thing I thought because I'm like, okay, all you need is 10 people who can get 10 people. So I was like, I bet. So, you know, I was raw in the beginning. So, you know, I was coming in there. Chad sent me. We you know, we rolling out. So, you know, I was getting them in trouble and stuff like that or whatever. So, you know, I was rough. But then I learned, you feel, I was getting screenshotted and all that. But then I learned how to move more meticulously, you know, how to move more strategically or whatever. I didn't learn in that company, but it did put me in a situation where, you know, a lot of people coming over from that company did not like me. Or whatever, because of what I was doing, how I was doing it.
I remember.
And what didn't make it any better was because I couldn't say, like, once I realized I couldn't say Chad's name, it's like, so he was throwing me up under the bus, goddamn. Like, yeah, that's Ray, goddamn. But I get it because he got to keep his check over there. So it's like, I already know, you know what I'm saying, what the situation is or whatever. But yeah, he's like, yeah, that's Ray, goddamn. I don't know, he crazy. And so, you know, then people mad at me.
I remember all this. I remember.
You
Ray,
know?
I remember this because I would tell you this, right? You know, yes, 5 links was going downhill, and I had people within my organization that was going over to Wake Up Now, and I heard some of them was going over with you, Ray. I had heard that, and I'm gonna be quite frank. I was like, oh man, I was a little upset at that time, and then I was hearing about as well. Chad had some involvement at that time, but I was still holding down the 5 link side, even with Chad, right, at that particular time. And you're right, you know. Chad was under smoke. Chad was under smoke with the company. Fire,
lava.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, I remember that.
But you and Ashley Jackson, y'all was the first people to kind of like. It was like we didn't have like when we finally was in the same room. It wasn't no beef. It was like it was like you know. Exactly. And so because even I didn't know, you know, because like I said, a lot of people didn't like me because of how you know how it was happening. And so fortunately, you know, I was able to make hit, you know, Founder 6, eight grand a month at that time. And so what people got to know is I was sleeping on my mom's futon. You know, I had like a little fat TV. I ain't had no flat screen, a little tiny little 16-inch or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I was going through it at that time. I had like 3 pairs of jeans when I started MLM. So at the end of the day, like my confidence was down, you know, at that point in time. I think anybody's would be. But I still knew that it was possible. And so I knew I had to move strategically. I knew because of my situation, I couldn't do it the same way. I was only getting away with it with filings because it's like, okay, you know, I don't got no damn money, but you know he does. So you know that it was easy, you know, and it was my friend. So I didn't have to worry about them picking up the phone or people pulling up to, yo, my boy about to pull up. You know, if it was somebody else or, yo, I got somebody coming over there, hell nah, they ain't coming over here, right? You know, but if it was me, it was a little bit easier, you know, or whatever. And so, and then he was making money. So, you know, it made it even better.
Yep.
And so, long story short, so I just felt like at the time I was just so, it's just so much desperation. Like I seen it can happen. And then, you know, the fear of loss, like, okay, we're late in this. Cause I told Chad about Wake Up Now, like almost a year before, you know, and he was like, you know, it's some BS. So I continue with filings or whatever. But that 12 people, $600 a month, you know, all I need is 12 people.
That was
12 people.
There. Yeah.
I can make $600 a month and I'm not making no money where I'm at. So, you know, we went over there and did that. And so when I went to New York and I seen everybody, that's what opened up my eyes really. And then going to Miami, that once I went to Miami for the Wake Up Now conference, that blew my mind so much because I was not, you gotta understand, I was not trying. I get everybody else is doing it nowadays. Yeah. I haven't been anywhere. Yeah. And so just going to Miami at that point of time, that made me feel trapped and in the cage. I felt in prison in Atlanta. I felt like Atlanta was a prison. I felt like I got to get out of here. I got to claw out the walls. Yeah. So that made me more excited. And then I was making money at the time, so I knew that it was more possible. But, you know, 3 months later, the whole company crashed in, you know. And so, and I still tell people about it because I don't feel bad, you know, now about it. This was 2014 in 2014. You know, so I ended up moving into a house because I was making good money at that point. So I got out of, you know, that futon to my house. Yeah. I was renting it out. And because things got bad, you know, I got a car. At that point, I had a car. But, man, I was 2 months behind on my rent. You know, I remember it being November. I didn't know what the I was going to do. I was 2 months behind on my rent.
This is after Wake Up Now.
This is after Wake Up Now. Yeah, I was 2 months behind on my rent. I was 3 months behind in my car note. Like, damn near I'm hiding it in the garage. Yeah. You know, dead ass, you know. And so my light bill was 1 month behind or whatever. And I'm literally like, and at that time I'm young, I'm literally like, I ain't got the money to pay this, man, fuck it. Yeah. You know, so I'm just like, you know, y'all want to go out tonight, we going out. You know, I ain't got the money or whatever, you know. And so I don't know why. Like, I don't, like I said, I always feel like, you know, God got some type of, you know, like, I don't know. I just feel like I've always, ever since this stuff started happening to me, I've always felt like something is, I don't know, something's guiding me or something is holding me from, I don't know. But long story short, Chad calls me, you know, I'm all these months behind. And he's like, yo, this some vacation stuff. You know, what's up? Yeah. So I'm like, you know, what's up? Like, what's up? Like, you know, I need the bag or whatever. Like, what's up? I need some money. I'm hungry. Like, you know, really, I'm kind of starving over here. And so, long story short, I got involved in vacation. You already know because we both got involved, bro. Yep. I made $9,000 my first 3 weeks of being in the company, $9,000 in commissions. Yep. So that I caught up with my rent. I caught up with everything except for my car note, which was able, you know how cars is. You always restructure stuff. Right. But I caught up with everything. So I made that, like, basically, you might as well say it was $9,000, but you might as well say $10,000. So here comes December. Now, granted, people know I made $10,000 in the company, but I had to spend all that stuff on stuff I owed. So I had no money to buy nothing. So I was still coming to meetings. I was coming to the meetings like, man, look, you know, I was coming to the meetings looking like I can't, because, you know, I could always dress, but I was still coming to the meetings not looking like I made no $10,000, put it that way, or whatever. I knew it, you feel me? You know, it affected, you know, my speaking confidence, my confidence when I got in front, it affected all that stuff. So I knew it, but it was nothing I could do. And so it wasn't to that following month, because remember that residual, you know, it take like 2-3 months to kick in. You gotta remember that because people got to pay. Exactly. And so that following month, I made more money, but I still was coming up out of that hole or whatever. So really it wasn't until about January, February to where I could really start enjoying my money. And so I remember it got to a point because, you know, that was my first time, you know, hitting the, you know, I think the highest I was making was $24,000 a month at that time. Yeah. You know, don't sound like a lot now, you know, I get it, you know, but people got in the comp plan? National Diamond. National Diamond at that. You know? Okay. And so I remember making that money, getting like listless, like a little bit. Like I remember in the beginning, like making that money, like acting like I didn't have any money. Like I wouldn't even upgrade to all flats, you know, because it's like, yo, it's $2. I know I was good, or whatever. And then eventually, I realized like, oh, the check's gonna keep coming. Because remember, we was in that company for about 3 years,
Right, exactly.
So I was like, damn, the check's gonna keep coming. So I remember just waking up every day just drunk, like drunk, like what the. Like happened last night. Like I remember every day doing this, and that definitely it spoiled me and it stagnated me. Because and I get it. It was so much stuff I could not do. It was so many rooms I couldn't get in. So many people who wouldn't talk to me. So many females who wouldn't even look at me. It was so much stuff going on before. So when I finally started making that money, and I finally started being able to do something for myself and helping other people, that when I finally got that light put on me, that like I indulged it too much. I indulged it way too much. And so that's the one thing I could change if I could go back. Like I indulged it way too much, And so because of that, I didn't do some of the best things with my money. Now I ain't gonna tell y'all, obviously, we good. I never, blown the whole bag.
What was you blowing your money on? Let's talk about that. What was you blowing your money on?
Man, I'm gonna keep it real. I'm ashamed to even say. It's kind of embarrassing, at the end of the day.
Well, what's one of your best investments you made, and what's one of your worst, you would say, when you was making all this money?
All right, so my best investments was crypto, I'll say.
Okay.
My worst investments was, I'm scared to say, because if I say this, then and it's the thing, y'all. Like I'm about this is where we starting. So I just want y'all to know we about to tell some stories. It's about to be a different podcast. I got some stories, that once we get further into the timeline, that I think people should know. People should know. People should know some of the stuff that go on in the industry. But I would say women. Because and the reason why I'll say, and it don't be because I'm directly spending money on a female, is a lot of times you do stuff to get women's attention. So we go out to Compound and spend whatever they cost a bottle.
Right.
Well, we can just go to some place that charge a lot less. But we doing that for what?
Me and you have been on some of them nights together.
Yeah. And it's like we doing too much. We doing too much.
Yeah.
And so, and then also, like at the end of the day, what people got to understand is when you first coming into money, people know that. Yeah. They can see that.
Exactly.
Within you, a female can see that. And she know how to take advantage of you, because of that. Okay. And so I had older females, that was able to really like, pray, on that, and I'm not saying like all the older females I done dealt with, you feel me? I ain't saying that, it's been some good ones, but it's been some that done prayed and so I kind of like, I seen that, but some of the best investments I would say in myself, in crypto, I would say, and I'm not telling people just go put your money in crypto.
Yeah. But,
I kind of got involved at a good time and it shot me up. And, I've been burnt too with it too. So that's, it is what it is or whatever. But there's nothing that you can invest in better than yourself. Right. Bet on you because, 100%. And this goes back to the vacation days, like, and so, and this is what I want to say too, because so much stuff go on behind the scenes that people don't even know about, right? Mm-hmm. And so, one thing that go on, you remember when we used to have the leaderboard on vacation, right. Who putting in the most recruits a week, right?
Exactly. Top producers. You know
why they stopped doing that?
Why?
Because the person that's getting all the recruits every week at the top gonna call the owner up like, yo, what up, bro? Like, I'm getting 10, 11 people a week and everybody else getting 3. Give me my money. You feel me? I need more money. Okay. So now, what the owner gonna do? This person bringing in sales. Yeah. They got some leverage.
Right.
So they got to fix it. Yeah. And guess what they do after that? They take the chart down. They take the chart down. I've done it before. I've seen it done before. Yeah. And so And so we did come into a period of time with vacation where I felt like we kind of flatlined. And so that brings me up into the contract situation. This is what I really want to tell people, because people don't know about the contract situations that go on behind the scenes. They never know. Yeah. They never know. People are not telling these stories. There's all these people, MLM talking about all this stuff, but they don't never keep it real, bro. Yeah. They don't never keep it real. That's why I'm an outcast. Yeah. You feel me? That's why I always shine. That's why I'm an outcast. That's why a lot of people don't like me. I'm going to tell some stories. A lot of people may not like the story, but the story I'm going to tell, it happened. Okay. You know what I'm saying? It happened. It's true. Yeah. They may not like it, but this is what happened, and people need to know about it. I'm not going to, put nobody, bad business and personal business out there, but if it include me, then, I'm going to tell it. Okay. And so, let's just get to the, the first contract situation for me, right? So, I'm in vacation. I'm making, I got a $20,000 a month residual check. Chris Childs come to me, $20,000 a month residual check, and that's not counting my weekly money. Yeah. And so Chris Childs come to me, Chris Childs and Mickey come to me, Chad, wife, they come to me, yo, this wine company, you feel me? I remember. This my first check, my first contract, yo, this wine company, they got the bag, they want to pay you. Yeah. You feel me? So I said, okay. So I said, I'm gonna do it. How much y'all gonna pay me? $10,000 up front. $1,250 a week, $1,250 per week for the first 2 months, right? So that's $20,000, right? So I get in. I put in 30 people in 3 days, and the wine company $300 to start. Yeah. 30 people, 3 days. So, and I'm still recruiting people, but long story short, I look at the leaderboard. I see I put in my numbers look like in a week. I'm at like almost 48, 46, 47 people. I see that the next person behind me like at 16. So I wasn't feeling that. Yeah. So I called Peter Jensen. He went on. I called PJ. Yo, no. First off, I called the office first. Okay. I'm like, I need more money now, or I'm done. I don't care. I need more money now because I'm gonna bring in more people than them. Regardless, I need more money out. So this is what I need. I need another $10,000, and then I need my 12 because it was a true up. Yeah. So I need that $1,250 on top of my check. I remember her saying, "Oh, we can't do that. I don't give a you can do." I ain't tell her that, but I said, "I'll get PJ on the phone now. Yeah. Get me on the phone with him now. Yeah. Get me on the phone with him now." And so, and I probably was a little aggressive on that white lady, Yeah. But it wasn't no intention. It just I wasn't feeling that. And so I remember him telling me, he said, "You signed a contract." Yeah. I said, "I don't give a about this contract, bro. Like, you see these numbers? Look at the scoreboard. Look at the scoreboard, bro. Yeah. Like, I'm not doing nothing. Like, okay, cool. My people drop out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they'll drop out, bro. Exactly. I need my money. Yeah. And so look, we went dormant. We got off the phone, went dormant for 2 days. I ain't talked to him for 2 days. Then I get a call back Friday. That's payday, right? Yeah. So I get a call back Friday from from the lady at the office first. So I get a call from her. You know what? They're gonna redo your contract or whatever. So and the payment that's coming to you today, you're gonna get your normal check. You're gonna get your extra $10,000, and you're gonna get your $1,250. So I made like 20-something grand that day. So once I got that sound, I knew the check normally, their direct deposit at like 3 p.m. every single day. Yeah. So I was already at the mall at 3 p.m. I was at the mall already when that touched down. Ready to go or whatever, And guess what? 300-400 people later, I think at least like 300 people later, I was putting in so many people, they actually moved me to another, and this is why I say people need to know this or whatever. I ain't gonna say, my upline and stuff like that, but they moved me. It was a binary, so they moved me to an infinite leg or whatever, to where it was like infinity. So no matter what, I was catching money off my pay leg or whatever. So long story short, I made money from that company for almost a year. Residual money off that company for over a year because they did that. And I had people that still wanted to do it or whatever. And so crazy, another story about that company. So you remember Ambo, right? Yeah. So I ended up getting him a contract up there. So anyway, so it was a company called RE that Peter was a part of that he owed Ambo some cheese from, right? He owed Ambo some cheese. So at this point, they was done doing contracts. But we went to the meeting, and, Ambo, did his Ambo thing like, yo, bro, You know, you still owe me some money. You
Yeah,
feel me?
yeah.
Or whatever. So, you know, I went around the back or whatever, you know, chopped it up. PJ, look, bro, give him the contract, you know, give him the little true up, the little 10 grand every single week, or whatever. He did put a stipulation in there that he had to put like 8 people in a week or whatever to get the money. But because, like, I mean, Peter knew what it was, man. So he owed the money. And so, long story short, he ended up getting, he got his whole 20 grand. I think he did. You know, I don't want to speak. You know, I think he did. I think he got his whole 20 grand.
Yeah.
Out of that situation, and he only put in like 6 people. So he didn't put in the 8 people he was supposed to. But he owed him that money though. He shouldn't have to put in nobody or whatever. And so that was one of the situations that if you wasn't there at the time or whatever, you would never got your money. You know, you would never got your money at all or whatever. So yeah, so that was my first contract situation. And so after that, and then I smashed that contract too. You know, I outperformed sales. That's why they gave me the extra money. So after that, you know, so I knew at that point, you know, it is about, you know, I got to get paid for this.
Yeah.
You know, I got to get paid for this. And so the next little bout that we had, you know, leaving vacation, because we felt stuck. You know, we wanted to make $100 grand a month. You know, we felt stuck at like, I was at like 20 grand a month or whatever. I don't know where Chad was, but we felt stuck, so we wanted to make more. And so, because it's a limitation, 20 grand a month, great, but there's a lot of limitations on that. So I think our Marcus Live came out or whatever, so we started putting people in there.
Yeah.
And so that company, like, man, I think I had 300 people, Chad had 300 people. We never got paid. It was like a week and a whole type.
I remember
and
that.
The company fell in.
I remember that.
Man, I ain't gonna lie, that so annoying because I ain't get my money. But the good thing about it was we wasn't all in. We still had vacation. Yeah. You know, and still was paying us. So it was like, man, that. We're just gonna go back to vacation. Yeah. You know, or whatever. So we did that company with no check. But I'm not saying we didn't get no incentives. You know, we definitely got incentives though. You know, we joined Austin, Gossi or whatever. We definitely some incentives. You know,
I'm gonna stop you there. I remember this. So I'm gonna speak on this very quickly. So I remember I joined iMarcus Live too for a minute while we was at vacation with you and Chad. Yeah. And I never forget, we went to Miami. It was me, you, Chad, and my boy James came in a couple days later. We hopped in the whips down there. You remember that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember that. We had been putting people in iMarcus Live, and we waiting on the check while we in Miami.
But that was a bad look.
Right? It never came. But we was just like, we still got vacation.
I told Chad that Gerald all the way. I said, Gerald ain't gonna do else, bro. Like, I already know it. I was like, he was like, bro, I know. All he can't say is, I know, bro. I know. You try to talk to him, bro. He gonna look at it different. You try to talk to him. Y'all got a different relationship. Yeah. You try to talk to him. I was like, bro, I don't know what I don't understand this. Bro, like, what I'm gonna tell him, bro? Like, I don't want bro. I want my money too. I'm feeling it, bro. Like so. Yep. I don't know what I can say to him because I'm gonna keep it real, bro. He ain't gonna like that. Yeah. So he ain't gonna like to hear he ain't getting no money for that. I don't want it, bro. So you know that was that situation, and so that was another thing. So that's when I realized also, like, you know, how fast it could be gone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, because it was some people that hit $100 grand a month. And their money was gone overnight. Making $100 grand a month, money gone overnight. And y'all gotta understand, y'all think y'all know. You know, some people think y'all know. It's very few people that's gonna listen to this that actually know what it feel like. Because I done did it, win $100 grand a month and then lose that income. You know, or whatever. Ain't nothing else gonna pay you $100 grand a month. Yeah. So ain't nothing else gonna fit that bill. It's like being a ball player. You making millions of dollars a year. As that contract stop, you're not gonna get paid millions of dollars to talk on TNT. True. You're not gonna get $1 million talking on Sports Center. That's true. They're gonna give you hundreds of thousands, not millions. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And so, you know, so when I started realizing this stuff and I started looking around the industry and I started seeing people making more money than me, that I knew I could be making the same amount, that's where the greed came in. Right? Instead of, okay, I should have been working on certain things when I was stagnant. You know? Yeah. That I wasn't working on. Yeah. And so that's when the greed came in. But don't get me wrong, the greed it was needed. You know, or whatever. And so I knew I needed more. I knew I could make more, you know. And so I would say the best way I could say it is, I don't know, you know, if we got Mike Vick fans in here, I remember Vic saying, like, I was the last person to practice, first person to lead. That was that. Even though my work ethic was high, that was me, or whatever. Yeah. And so that always cost me, or whatever. And so, long story short, you know, vacation was just like it was getting to a point where we seen the funeral. You know, before it happened. And so we had to join another company. And so I'm like, let's start our own company, even though knowing that we ain't had nothing, no resources, no nothing to be able to do that. And I don't mean money resources. I just mean like just the tech, just everything that I know now that I can do it now versus before. And so I remember I called Jeremy Monty. I don't know if Chad gave me his number or if I don't know how it happened, but I called Jeremy. I told him the idea of what I wanted to do. He's like, look, I want to do the same thing. How about I just make you guys part of the corporate staff, founding, or whatever. And I said, well, Jeremy, it's going to cost. Like you got to pay me and you got to pay Chad and you got to pay some other folks.
Yeah.
And Jeremy said, oh, that's done. We got millions of dollars. We got $2 million budget. So at that time, I didn't understand the $2 million budget back then. $2 million, I'm like, oh, shit. All right, everything is done, but I didn't understand how quickly 2 million go. But long story short, so we get involved in that company, right? And so we're planning everything out. And so, there's a couple things I'm gonna tell right now that I hope people don't get mad at me for, but it is what it is. This happened. You feel me? Yeah. And so, I remember in the formation of it, I remember I don't know how I got in talk with Jacob Mickle. You feel me, Jacob, or whatever. But I just knew he was gonna snitch on my ass. Or whatever, but I don't know why I gave him the information, but I gave him the information or whatever. I just knew he was going to snitch because at that point, like I told you, a lot of people didn't like me from the filing stuff, so I learned how to move better. Yeah. And so I just gave him the deets or whatever. I don't know if he called me. I forgot how it happened, but long story short, he was never under me. So it wasn't a situation where I was recruiting him or whatever. But long story short, I invited him to the initial dinner. Jacob was all in. Boom, Jacob all in. And I got to tell that story because the board happened after that. So, leaders we was in, and so I remember, at that same table, Shaniza being there, and, we cool now and but, there's some shit that happened. And so she ended up taking a screenshot of my phone or whatever, right? A screenshot of a picture of my phone and sent that to Trey Harris. Trey Harris snitched. He's like that damn played the flute, goddamn, like stool pigeon, man. Like stool pigeon. Got on the stool and stood on that shit. Oh, man. Stood on the stool, bro, and snitched, bro. So really, it's Shaniza's fault because you screenshotted my phone. Yeah. So because when the screenshot got back, that's how I knew. Like, you took a picture of my phone. Yeah. So I knew who it was. I knew who I showed the phone to. So technically got my check cut on vacation when that happened. So technically, she was like, yeah, I'll pay you back. I'll pay you 3 bands, even though my check was way more than that. Yeah. I ain't never get the 3 bands. Dang. You feel me? I ain't never get the 3 bands. But so obviously, I'm still owed for today. You feel me? And so, and everything I got to say right now, you feel me? If somebody want to come out here and dispute it or whatever, we can hop right back on another goddamn podcast and you can say that this did not happen and we can pull some receipts. Because what I'm saying is nothing. I'm not going around as I'm telling you exactly what happened and not what I seen, my perspective. No, these are the events. These are the factual things that happened. So anyways, so Trey snitch. She showed my phone. You feel me? I got my check cut. So fortunately, I don't know why, but David Manning released my check. So I ended up getting my check. And I got my next one.
What did she show on your phone
though? She showed it was some message about me talking about what me and Jeremy Monty was about to do with the GPS company. Okay, gotcha. And so so she showed that and then that stirred up some that really kind of made stuff have to move faster. We had to like dip out a lot faster. So that messed up stuff, for real. She
screenshotted it, Shaniza, right? And sent it to Trey Harris. And then he sent it to David Manning. And he sent it to David Manning.
Exactly. Gotcha. And I said something about Kai. At that point, my Caribbean team, Akeem, he got kicked out. Because the message had something to do with him or whatever. So immediately because he had some other stuff come out too, and that put 2 and 2 together. So that was, I ain't gonna lie, that was some dirty stuff though. So how that happened.
Sound like it.
Yeah, bro. And look, this is in a formulation. So we formulating a company, right? And so y'all gotta understand, when you formulating a company like this, millions of dollars are at stake. Mm-hmm. That means you have the potential of making millions of dollars, right? Through contracts, commissions, and incentives, right? And so at that point, that's how I'm used to getting paid. So long story short, so we're still working out the details of our contracts when this happened. So this just like it was like when I got screenshot kicked out, like it was like so anyways, I resigned before they made the decision to kick me out. So I to save face or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. So at that point, Kai and the King got terminated. So anyways, my initial contract was it was for 16 grand up front, and I want to say 8 grand a month, for the first 3 months.
Yeah.
And then it came with incentives,
Yeah.
So this was the best contract I've had, at the end of the day, and I've skipped one, which I'll bring up later. But at this point, this was the best contract I had. And I think Chaz was like more the line of maybe 30, 40 up front, and I think his was like 20 a month for the first 3-4 months, and he came with other incentives. I had another incentive too where they paid for a car for me. So they were supposed to pay up to $2,000 a month for a car for me, for any car I wanted or whatever. So long story short, in the formulation of all this stuff or whatever, people coming from different companies, And so that's why I hope people don't get mad when I say names, because, this is just stuff that happened. It's not something that, at the end of the day, is shade on anybody. But long story short, so we're negotiating contracts, right?
Yeah.
And so at the time we negotiated contract, you got to understand, I had 5,000 active people, in my organization. I had 5,000 active.
It's a national diamond application.
And so I know at that point, I can do 10,000 or more active.
Yeah.
So I negotiated my contract well below what should have been done. I'm just now kind of getting into, these high stress situations when you negotiating contracts. So what I'm telling y'all is, this is how companies get formed. I don't know if y'all paying attention. And also, behind the scenes, these sometimes these things go bad, at the end of the day. And so at that point, I had my people ready to go. And at that point, and I lost out. I'm gonna tell you a big thing on how I lost out. But at that point, I really messed up where I put it this way, I messed up. So it was a lot of things I messed up on, coming into that situation, because I didn't understand, the things that I understand now. And so long story short, I think the company had like a $50, lock a spot in situation, right? That was another thing. We formulated the company, me and Chad. We should got like money off of that. So they charged $50, I think. I think it was $49. We should at least got $20 off that, 10 a piece off that, And we'll get into the contracts that, we did a better job in later. But we should have got 10 a piece. Easy. Okay. But long story short, and I'm talking about $10, per customer that come in the business.
As a whole.
As a whole, everybody that comes in, we got $10 because we formulate a company. Yeah. And so, long story short, or whatever. So when I found that out, instantly, AWOL. I go AWOL. I lost it. So, I quit. At that point, I need more money. I need more money now. I need my money now. I said.
So how long was you in GPS?
At that point, I technically wasn't in it yet because we haven't launched it.
Gotcha.
We were still negotiating contracts. Yeah. And so we got, kind of kicked out. So it forced us to negotiate faster. So that's another reason where, one, I didn't ask for the right stuff coming up front. So, that's where everything started off, where it started off. And so long story short, what ended up happening was, I was AWOL, I was done. And so when I found out he was getting that much money, and so they end up going up on my upfront. So I got 20 grand up front. I think I got 20 or 24 grand. I can't remember because this is 2017. So I got 20 or 24 grand up front. So I got 24. Yeah, I got 24 grand up front. Boom. Okay. 24 grand up front for joining. And I got 16 grand a month for the first 4 months instead of getting 8 grand a month for the first 3 months, right? Mm-hmm. So I got that negotiated in there, and I got my car bonus up from $1,000 a month. It was at $1,000 a month to $2,000 a month or whatever. So that was the negotiation, right? Which was, it sounds good to people, You know, don't get me wrong, $24,000 just sign your name. Like, so what people don't understand is I didn't go to school for this. You know, this is something I figured out. And so once you're able, you know, to get to the top of a company, you know, people know that you have a customer base that's worth money to their business.
Right.
And they will pay you for that.
Right.
But if you don't know you can get paid for that, you won't get nothing.
Right. Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so there's a give and take, you know. And so where I was at before was too much ego because I wasn't putting I had talent, so I wasn't putting I knew what to do. And so I wasn't putting the right work in, and I wasn't doing the right things. And that's another thing, you know, and I'm going to pause right here, and I'm just talking about MLM. And so one thing about MLM that I don't like, you know, and this is part of the reason why me and you got, you know, kind of, you know, I'm still halfway in it. You know, you pulled all the way away from it. But this is the main reason. These leaders and these people that, you know, are leading you guys, some of them, and very few, 1%, right, you know, are really shining stars. And when I say about shining stars, they really, you know, got stuff really going on, and they can possibly put you on other things. What I mean by that is, you know, many of us who made all this money, you know, I was fortunate, you know, and we're getting to how, but many of us who made this money, you know, I'm not going to say splurged it and stuff like that, because, you know, people have made investments, but it's people that was making, you know, high six figures right now that, you know, aren't. And so not only are they not, you know, it's people that's making high six figures, you know, in MLM, but they're working right now, you know. And that's not to say anything bad about anybody, but what I'm saying is we was not taught what we should have been taught. Okay. You know, so you know, a few years ago, I just started understanding credit and how to use your credit. Yeah. You know, it's people, you know, ripping people off on credit, you know, literally. And so I just understood credit. You know, we think that, hey, you just pay for stuff, you know, monthly, like everything else. But, you know, you're getting hit with compound interest. And that's what people don't realize. Right. And so people think, oh, let me use my credit card for emergencies and all that stuff. If you can't pay for that thing 3 times, then you don't need to swipe it. It ain't no emergency. Right. You know, we wasn't taught that. Yeah. So even making high six figures, I'm telling y'all, my credit was shot because it would be up. And I do some crazy stuff, use over 30% or whatever, right. And then it'd be shot or get hit or charge it up so much, and the compound interest come in, and you don't, you know, you're living. You're not looking at the statements. You just pay. You just got an auto pay for the minimum, right? Or auto pay for whatever, maybe $200 or whatever, right? You just got your auto pay set, and then you look at your bill, and you just like, oh man, it's $24,000, and I just paid like $2,000, and none of it went to my. So yeah, it's all interest and stuff, and then that's when you understand. But don't nobody teach you that, right? But they're telling you that they're putting you on the best thing, and they're trying to help you and all that stuff. But these people can't really help you. You know, at the end of the day, it can help you. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't get into MLM. If I didn't, I wouldn't be where I'm at. But what I'm saying is, you know, you have to think for yourself. You have to do things. You have to bet on yourself. You can't look at things as if it's the end all, because, you know, that's just one situation. And I'm telling you that, you know, that messed me up, you know, when I was making money. There's other situations as well, you know, within that. But getting back to this or whatever, because I made that big fuss, I was able to get the money, you know, that I asked for or whatever. We moved forward with the company. And so, you know, people started not getting paid. And so that started happening a month in.
And that was with GPS.
That was with GPS. People started not getting paid. And so
why was people not getting paid?
Let me get into this.
Okay.
So granted, we put in 8,000 people in 30 days. So, you know, you got 8,000 excited people. So people don't understand what's going on at the top.
And I'm going to say this to some of you all that maybe listen to this. If you've been in MLM and network marketing in the past, you might look at it like 8,000 people, 30 days. Like, that is crazy, right? I can tell you this, though. We was coming up in the business, especially vacation. We started doing project this, project that. That really became the norm for us.
Yeah.
Right?
5,000 people.
Yeah, that became the norm. Yeah.
5,000 people, 90 days is, you know.
Exactly.
It's
that's what we did.
How you come in. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
So,
go ahead, though.
So, and that's where you got to be at. Your vision, even if you can't do it, your vision has to be, you know, 5,000 people, 90 days. You know, that you got to come in with that. You know, and so
Yep.
you know, getting into more so of why people wasn't getting paid, right? Because the stuff that happens behind the scenes, greed. You have an investor, somebody investing, somebody who has a product, right?
Yeah.
And they want to get that product distributed to customers. So you need multiple things, right? You need multiple people. You need somebody who has the money, somebody who has access to the product and can move the product around, somebody who has access to the merchant and get the account situated, right? And then you have to have the people that can bring the people in. All of these people can do stuff, but these people, they may be great at what they do, but they can't do the other things. Yeah. And so the reason why these owners pay this money is because they start up a company, but they need customers, right? Just because you have money or you have access to a product don't mean that you can just get customers. You can sell gold. Exactly. You don't know that. You can have gold and nobody buy it, right? Nobody buys it. But if you know how to market, you know what you're doing, or you know somebody who does know how to market, right? Then you can get your product off the ground. So that's the reason why they were paying us. So, but anyways, you know, people started not getting paid, and so greed was setting in. And so, you know, even with myself or whatever, you know, the greed was setting in. And so the main greed that was going on with the guy who owned the company, right? Taking the money for the investors, you know, $2 million up front that he got for that, and just was literally tricking it off, lost his wife, you know.
Oh, man.
Yeah, lost his wife. Wow. And so, you know, and so long story short, you know, we didn't realize that till, you know, we get deeper into it. But at this point, people start getting paid. So Shaniza was on the chopping block first.
Oh, man. So you stop there real quick. So you say he got $2 million from investors to fund the business. And of course, he's bringing in all these top earners. He's promising they can pay all his money. And he's tricking it off.
He's tricking it off somewhere.
And lost his wife.
Yeah, he lost his wife. Tricking off somewhere, you know, wherever he's tricking it off on, he's tricking it off.
Okay.
You know, and thank God he wasn't on drugs, but he's tricking it off. He
worse.
Probably would have some drugs, you know, when you're doing that type of trick off, you know, we know how that go or whatever. And so, yeah, when that started happening, Shaniza was on the chopping block first. Now, mind you, she already owed me 3 bands. So I get a phone call, you know, right? We owe Shaniza his money. Should we pay her? And so this is why I say greed set in. Because, of course, she owed me money. Yeah. So, you know, we should all have each other's back as distributors. But the problem with network marketing is 5 people come to a company, 5 people get contracts. 5 people are cool with each other. 5 people are best friends. Right? Yeah. But the money comes in. And then now that company owner that pays him the money controls him. Right? Because he calls this person, hey, look, you know, you got dirt on this person because we just want to stop paying him. He's not valuable to us no more. So what you think the other people going to do? They best friends. So the other 4 are going to be like, oh, well, you just kick him out. Because they want their money to come in, right? And so this happens all the time. And so that's why stuff falls apart too, you know. But for this particular situation, you know, at the end of the day, when she's on the chopping block, he called me. I was like, yeah, go ahead and cut that check, you know. Not cut the check like cut the check. I mean, cut that like don't pay her. You feel me? Like she only put in like this lowly amount of people. And I'm not talking bad about anybody, but what I'm saying is, you know, this is how I felt at the time. And
I'm going to say this, right? I'm going to pause you real quick. And Shaniza, I know, of course, Shaniza, personally, we were diamonds together in vacation. And Trey Harris, we've mentioned you as well in this podcast. Being you hear this podcast and you want to come on and share your side, welcome to do it. So I just want to throw that out there.
Definitely, and no heat or anything like that. No smoke or nothing like that. You know, if somebody comes with a different version or whatever, or an explanation, I can understand the explanation of it. Yep. But, you know, different versions just didn't happen. You know, and that's just, you know, that's just the facts of what happened, you know, at the end of the day. And so, yeah, when he called me, I was like, yeah, you know, ain't no point in paying, you know, because one, that's my money. You paying her my money. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like I brought in, I think at that point, 3,000 or 4,000 people, you know, so you're paying her my money. I'll perform my contract. Yeah. I asked for the wrong stuff. And so the money started not coming in. People started not getting paid. So Shaniza wanted to chopping block first. She didn't get her money, but it was other people that didn't get their money neither. And so when they start not getting their money, what you think stuff start happening? Production starts stopping. So now the new money flowing that was taking care of stuff because stuff wasn't getting paid off the initial money because it's been tricked off, right? Everything's getting paid off new money. Yeah. So when new money starts slowing down, what you think happens? You feel me? Stuff starts slowing down. Right. So now my check started getting, you know, hey, you know, you owe me this this $20,000 bonus, because I had bonuses and incentives, and you're talking about you can only pay me 5 bands right now, and you got to pay me, and then I start slowing down, and then I see how you did Shaniza, and then I really start slowing down. So, anyways, that company ended up falling in. So they did pay $20,000 down payment towards my Maserati. They did. So I was able to get a Maserati, and they paid for the car note and the insurance for 6 months. Okay. So, and I didn't get the $2,000 a month or whatever because the note was only like $600 a month. But how it was, the way the bank would do it, and it was just like so much confusion. They just said, hey, instead of giving you $2,000 a month, we're just gonna put $20,000 down on it and pay the note because the note's $600 a month, and the insurance I think at the time was like $210 a month. So that's how that was done. And that lasted for 6 months. And so, and before that, this was another thing, when Barry Donaldson came to vacation, or whatever, and no shade, no nothing, but long story short.
And let me stop you right very quickly there, okay? Barry Donaldson. And some of these names so you all can understand. Chad Thompson.
High income earner.
I know Ray's mentioned Chad several times throughout this podcast. I just interviewed Chad some weeks ago. You can go back and look at that episode. If you've been tuning in, you already know who Chad is. But if not, go back and look at the episode we just did. But Barry Donaldson as well was in 5 Links with us. Right, he was a top income earner in that particular company, and then he decided to come over to vacation, and he actually admitted that 5 Links compensation plan was broken.
Yes.
That's part of the reason why he came over.
And kept leading his people to do it.
Yeah.
And so, and that's another thing that, I didn't ever respect in networking and leading your people. Selling my people your stuff used to get me so mad. You gotta understand, when I found out you were selling my people your stuff, and I'm not making $1 for that, I ain't gonna lie, that used to send me so... I've had people kicked out of companies for that. You're selling my people your system, and I'm not getting a dime from that.
Oh yeah.
You're shooting fish in my barrel, bro. Nah, I'm not with that.
Yeah, he's selling a lot of his own personal.
You got to catch what you eat.
Yeah.
I work too hard, and so. But anyways, though, so Barry at that point he got me kicked out of a meeting, and vacation. So initially, I'm already whatever. And somehow he weaseled his way, and let me stop real quick. Somehow he got to the top, of, GPS or whatever. I don't know how he got in there, but he got in there, and that did kind of muck up. Made a comment, on stage. He was in Cancun, Mexico, about how people's cars is on E. And a lot of people did use their last money to get there. And so that killed the air. My people was so mad. I ain't gonna lie. My people was in so much of an uproar. I paid for so many people's dinners and drinks and stuff that night. Y'all don't understand. I paid for so many people's stuff that day. People that weren't even on my team, I paid for. I had a friend, that I kind of grew up with a little bit. I did some stuff for her real quick just cause. It was just too much stuff going on. The company at that point, dude got broke. But this is the crazy thing. Okay, so that just reminded me what happened on that same trip. So anyways, yes, that company fell into the ground. So I went from making $30,000 a month residually and incentives to nothing coming in. But before that, nothing stopped or nothing happened or whatever. We're in a back room meeting. Me, Donaldson, Jeremy Monty, the founder, the funding person. I want to say I think his name is Jeff. I think that's his name. I forgot. I think his name is Jeff. And then it's David Lisiaga. Who else is back there, man? I can't remember. Chad back there. It's dumb people back there. All the high income earners is back there. Literally, David Lisiaga literally told Jeremy he was broke to his face. Company owner, product getter, merchant getter, all of that other good stuff. He said, bro, you're broke. Every time it was a problem, Jeremy said, okay, I'll pay for it. David said, no, you can't. Jeremy said, yeah, I'll pay for it. Jeremy said, no. David said, no, the hell you can't. How? He had the numbers already in notes. And he said, no, you don't have the money to pay for that. He said, you don't have the money to pay for it. The investor was even looking like, do you need some help? And then we had some guy. Oh, damn, I can't think of his name, man. It's going to come to me. But I can't think of his name. But he's been in the industry. His name Bill something or whatever. White guy, Bill something, older guy or whatever. But he came in and he's supposed to be president. He said, Jeff, no. He was like, Kevin is his name. Kevin was the investor. Kevin Chrysler. Kevin was the investor. So he said, no, like literally no. Like you're not putting no more money into this. Yeah. Bro, no, Jeremy, him. Literally, we're all in the meeting. Jeremy, what he's saying. Yeah. No, you're not adding no more. Jeremy's literally looking for a lifeline, whatever. David's telling him how broke he is, like literally to his face, telling him how broke he is. I've never seen nothing like that in my life. Yeah. We're in a backroom meeting that's supposed to be on the growth of the company and how we can take the company to another level. And literally, David Lisiaga adds all the numbers up and figure out Jeremy is broke and is operating on 6% profit. Oh, wow. He's operating on 6% profit. Man. 6% profit. Yeah. So how can you pay for some of the stuff he was offering to pay for? Right. So long story short, and that was at best. So he caught him. And so it was wild. You know, he had all the numbers, like all the numbers caught him. Yeah. And so long story short, shortly after that company fell or whatever. So at that point, you know, it left me kind of like, you know, a little fed up with MLM. Yeah. Left me fed up with MLM. I was really fed up with MLM. I was really fed up because I put a lot of work into that. You know, I know my worth. I know what I can do. So I didn't want to do it no more. So at that point, Marcus Live was building up again. I didn't see the vision. And, you know, if I can go back, I'd make some different decisions. But honestly, I'm glad I was on the path that I got on because my path gave me more confidence, you know, in myself than if I would have just went on the straight MLM path. But within that process, you know, I was so unsure about MLM. I just was whatever. So we're transitioning. You know, Chad's transitioning. He transitioned the team. And I get it, you know. Like, when I'm not wanting to do it, I get it. But, this is the biggest but, you know, at the end of the day. And that's my love him, man, you know. So, if you hear this, you know, ain't no shade. But, you know, you could have gave me your first spot, paid for and all that. You could have did all that. You know me. You know how I am or whatever. You should have did that just off the strength because I would have did you like that. You should have did it off the strength because at that situation, it was different. Of course, you was like big boy at that point because you put me on. Yeah. You still put me on. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you still should have did it. You know what I'm saying? You still should have did it. So where we was at was, you know, people started getting moved and, you know, people started transitioning over. And so, you know, my Caribbean team, you know, found a way to get a leg over there. And that was like one of my biggest legs, you know, at the end of the day. And this was, you know, I still was undecided. So, you know, that kind of like really kind of blew me off real quick or just about doing it or whatever. But, you know, I get the situation. I was hesitant. Maybe he wasn't thinking like, okay, if I do this, he going to build because I would have. But, you know, it just kind of left me sour about the whole I am thing. Like, you know, that was my boy. So it wasn't like I was going to stop with him over it. Because or whatever, you know.
Chad had your Caribbean team get a leg in his organization.
Yeah, exactly. So I would have been another leg. And I wasn't cool. I wasn't like uncool with not being another leg. It was just the fact that, okay, they're supposed to be under me. Okay, put them back up under me. You're okay, cool. Now I got this leg. Let me build the other two. Right. Give me time. Like, all this stuff is just not happening. Like, I'm processing. That's why I don't, like, that's my boy. Like, you know, ain't no love lost or whatever. Like, we're all processing this at the same time.
But, Ray, like, what was you doing at that time, though? Like, for him to not put you in that spot and put the Caribbean team up under you in that leg, like, what was you doing at that time? Like, what did you have going on?
I think he just knew. My sentiment towards MLM at that point was just like F it, because I knew I could do stuff. Yeah. So once I knew I could do stuff, I'm like, let me just focus this in another area and make more money other places. So I was really just more so on doing other stuff or whatever, which did benefit me later in the long run. Which I'm gonna tell you how it benefited me. Yeah, we're gonna get into that. Long story short, with that situation, it left me barred. But then everybody over there made millions. Shout out to you, made millions. They made millions.
I saw it.
You know, I missed out on that. And so my 2017, this was 2017, it was a bad year for me. Because when I lost that income, I had to figure it out again or whatever. And so that's why I'm glad I went down my route. Because, yeah, I had to figure it out again. You know, I was in a toxic relationship, you know, that was destroying friendships. You know, a couple of them I don't got no more, you know, at the end of the day. And so that was a bad year, you know, because of everything that happened. It started off great, but it was a bad year. Yeah. And so 2018 hit. That was like my resurgence year. And so long story short, you know, I did get back into MLM because I knew like, hey, look, even though during that time I was doing stuff, I was doing things and I was making money, affiliate, you know, and stuff like that, you know, just making money on my own. But I still knew that I still needed to be involved in that team thing because I understood that when you make money in the company, you involve yourself in the team. Right. Now you gain respect in the company. So if you have to do something else, now you have like more people that respect you that you can bring to another company. Yeah. So I understood that, and that was from the beginning. And so that's one of the main reasons why I always move faster than everybody else, because I thought faster. I thought more 10 steps ahead, because anybody can do that, you know? They just don't think about it. Yeah. Or they're just too scared to do it, or they got respect for somebody who ain't paying them. You know how that goes. You got respect for somebody who ain't paying them, or I'm too loyal and all that. Yes, okay, cool. You know, I'll take that check. But, you know, at the end of the day, just trying to figure out, you know, where I was at real quick with it. So once I realized I can do stuff for myself and became less dependent on network marketing, you know, that gave me more confidence. But I knew I needed network marketing because I needed that aspect, right? And so I got involved with one, ended up making, you know, like, again, 20 grand, you know, first month or whatever. So that year went by for me or whatever. And then the following year came, you know, that company messed up, income gone again. And so it left me at a point where I had to look for stuff, right? And so I got involved in e-commerce at that time. And it was a different space before, but I just shot off. I shot off with it, right? And so I was taking 30-day trips, and that's what enlightened me. Like, when I joined e-commerce, that was really what enlightened me. That was really where I seen, like, a lot of errors in my ways. That's what really showed a lot to me. Because with network marketing, it's so fast. You got to do this. Like, so fast, you don't get time to think about it, right? Yeah. Company in, now you got to do it again, fast again, right? You get time to think about it. But because I was making money that didn't require for me to be there and call nobody and pick up the phone and all that other good stuff, right? You know, I'd be in Africa and all I got to do is hit 2 buttons just to get something drop shit somewhere, you know, real quick. And then the money was coming in. It spoiled me or whatever. But I understood. I started seeing certain things. And so,
what were some of those errors?
Some of those errors was my credit. You know, that these people, they don't got their credit right. I needed my credit because I needed to order a product. Yeah. So I needed to order stuff with money, other people's money. And then also, I realized that because I needed the points. Because we travel. So why not travel for free? Right. We join all these travel programs, F them travel programs. Amex, pay enough, travel. Capital One, they give you miles. Like, ain't nobody teaching us that stuff. Yeah. We spending our money. We not in the lounges. We worried about the slapping that Amex on the counter. Is like, that's boss. Yeah. We not taught that. Right. And so that's when I realized that about credit and how credit worked, because I needed credit because I needed to order $30,000 worth of product that I want to spend out of my money. Right? Because I know I'm going to make it back. Right. But I might as well do it off credit, get the points, the cash back and all that stuff. So you get something back for something you're going to spend out anyways. Right? So that's when I realized that. And then I started realizing that these MLM, they don't know nothing about that. Because if they did, they would be flexing it. Because they can't even show you a points reward balance because they ain't getting it. Because they credit shot. Because mine was. And ain't nobody taught me. So ain't nobody taught them. Yeah. So that's when I started respecting folks in MLM. You know, I started respecting that. You know, Chad knew about all this. Chad always had the best credit. But everybody else, I just started respecting that. So, and I ain't gonna say, I was about to say disrespecting. I just started not respecting everybody, you know, or whatever. So then I was just like on a rogue thing or whatever. So I was just disrespecting MLM at just all costs. Like I was just on some disrespect because I already seen like I was making millions of dollars. Like oh no, not millions. I was making $1 million a year doing e-commerce. I was in Africa. I took a 30-day tour of Africa. I did a 30-day tour of the Middle East. I did a 30-day tour of Europe. These MLM people aren't doing stuff like that. They can't because they got to pick up the phone. Yeah. I'm 9 hours ahead. How am I pick up the phone for you? Ain't no picking up the phone for you. Yeah. I'm 9 hours ahead. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I started disrespecting that because it's like, yo, you ain't been on no 15-hour flight. You don't know nothing about to prepare for a 15-hour flight. You ain't been nowhere. Yeah. You go to the Bahamas. I go to Morocco. You know what I'm saying? So at that point, I just didn't respect nobody. And so my ego was getting there. So, you know, that and that's another thing that caught up to me. But at the time or whatever, I was getting all this money from e-commerce. Then, you know, a company called Tradera, you know, came up. And they wasn't paying no contracts. You know, I need my money to join stuff, so I didn't do it. But David, he signed me up. I did pay for it. I remember, you know, I forgot where I was in some other country. I literally, because I trust David as my boy, even though we fell out too. I'll talk about that or whatever, but we cool now. But I screenshot it. I mean, I took a picture of my car, sent it to him, he signed me up. Right? 2 months later, right? I'm on a 14-day trip. You know, 14-day trip, a tour to South America, you know. And so long story short, you know, Valentine's Day popped up. He calls me, yo, you're one person away from 1,000 a month. 11 people away from 2,000 a month. I ain't putting out one person. I swear to God, I'm telling you, I ain't putting out one person in. Not one person in. Yeah. So look, I'm thinking about my rent is $2 a month. I'm living in a condo. Yeah. You feel me? So I'm like, all right, one person, 1,000 a month, I bet. You know what? I'm a recruiter. Like 12 people, that's easy. Like I can do that blindfolded. Like, so let me get my $2 a month and knock out my rent. Cause that's how I always think, knock out my rent. You feel me? Let me knock out my rent. So I did that or whatever. Then I'm like, oh, you 60 people away from like $5 a month. So now I do that. The crazy thing is COVID hit. And because all the factories in China got shut down, that stonewalled my whole e-commerce business. Stonewalled, no money coming in. No money coming in from e-commerce. $1 million business, done. Yeah. But I didn't care because I at that point I seen I could make $100,000 a month with Tradera, and I did. I made $100,000 a month with Tradera. I made $100,000 a month in a network marketing company. Yeah. There's not many people that can say they did that, but I did. That was the first company you made 7 figures with. You were saying? That was the first company, and I did it, and I made $100,000 a month for 8 months, and I made $50,000 a month before that. Yeah. So I got a lot of cheese from that company. Yeah. And so it's not a lot of people that can say that they made $100,000 a month from a company. I made $100,000 a month from a company, from a network marketing company. I got to the top. Yeah. You know, the position that you look at when you first come in, like how I used to look at the position at the top. Right. Let me X out the position at the top because I ain't going to hit them positions. Yeah. Let me just look at $5 a month because I know I can get that 10 bands, 20 bands. Let me just look at that. I don't even look at that up there, right? I hit that. Yeah. And when I hit that, they had to come up with another position and another position. So they made it all the way to $1 million a month when I hit, you know. And so look, and so let me tell you, you know, David put me on. That's my boy. You know, I love him. Yo, we got to tell the story. So, yeah, so he called me, right, about Epic. Like, hey, I got a deal that's going to pay me so much more money. So at that time, we've been through so much Tradera. You know, that's another story. You know, we can talk about Tradera and a whole other podcast. Yeah. But we went through so much shit. I'm like, bro, I done de-ranked from $50,000 a month to $10,000 a month and got back to $50,000 a month on my own without you. I'm not joining no more MLM companies. Yeah. I'm good making 50. Bro, what do you even, this is in my mind. This is my boy, so I can't tell him this. So I'm like, what, like, no, I'm not. Like, in my mind, I'm not doing that. Yeah. So he ended up falling out with the company owners. Ego destroys a lot of shit.
Definitely does.
You feel me? And so, long story short, he goes over to Epic, right? And so they called me, Ray. We're going to give you David's spot. $100,000 a month spot. We're going to put you on top of everybody. I said, hell yeah. You feel me?
I
But
bet.
look, Megan Lynch
Yeah.
couldn't let that happen. Megan, I with you, but y'all couldn't let that happen.
Yeah.
Y'all couldn't let that happen. Y'all ain't let that happen. Y'all hate it. I should never told y'all. So that's what happened. I should never told them. Because once I told them, they made a big ass fuss to the owners, right? So they end up not giving me David's spot, and end up giving me a leg, and then combining two of my other legs. So that put me at $100,000 a month. You know. Now did I work for $100,000 a month? Of course, because they wouldn't have did it. They wouldn't have did it.
Yeah.
If they didn't know I was the piece to hold the whole company together, they wouldn't have did it. Because even when Megan and Reagan, you know, made that big fuss, they said, well, we got to do something for him.
Yeah.
He's expecting $100,000 a month. If we tell him he ain't going to get that, then what you think he going to do? Right?
Yeah.
So at that point, you know, because, and don't get me wrong, I was not with it. Y'all said what y'all said. But because they bought me a Rolex, and which I should have brought today, but they bought me a Rolex, $20,000 Rolex, you know.
Nice.
And they did make me $100,000 a month, and my organization was stable. I knew I was gonna be making that for a good minute. It was nothing gonna take it away. I was really pushing $250 a month. I was cool with it.
Yeah.
So, anyways, you know, 6 months into that, the company falls in. You know, I had $75,000 in my e-wallet. You know, we used to flex money in our e-wallet, right, showing that the company paid us. Exactly. I had $75,000. I used to close the room showing that.
Yep.
Right. And so, company closes, $75,000, trapped, gone, done. Right, can't get out. Right. Normal person would have cried. Yeah. Normal person probably would have, you know, did some crazy stuff, got, you know, emotional. But you know what? All right, I'm good. You know, I did this. I'll be all right. Yeah. You know? And so, I'm sorry, it wasn't all right. But long story short, I had a lot of money saved up, just so y'all know. Yeah. I was living in Miami at this time, had a lot of money saved up. Living in a $5,500 a month penthouse. Yeah, that sounds right. At that point, Miami. You know, $5,500 a month penthouse. I have a sea, ocean, river, and city view all at the same time. Living it up. You know, valet parking for my cars. And so, long story short, you know, that company ended, took all that from me, right? And so I'm in the middle of all that, you know, or whatever. And so, long story short, you know, that company ended, and so I joined another company, and at that point, I had to get a contract that was increased. So I leveraged the contract. So first off, you know, I needed, you know, $30,000 up front because I got to get paid. So I get $30,000 up front money, boom. $30,000 hit my account. This is before I signed the contract. This is how much trust, because I called David Manning because I was like, yo, I want to start up a company. Because at that point, I was like, I just want to start my own thing. He's like, nah, I got somebody starting one, Peter Hirsch. You know, rest in peace, because Peter's not here no more, you know, or whatever. And that's another story, you know, I'm going to get into too, or whatever. So long story short, Peter trusted me, you know, good guy, you know, Jewish guy, good guy, or whatever. And he trusted me, gave me that $30,000 up front, you know, boom. So he already knew I had that 75 hung up. Then I got $3.50 for every customer in the company, whether I put them in or not, right? So, long story short, I still end up getting a situation. I'm gonna tell you how. So, you know, I initially come in, we bring in 1,000, I think 1,100 people initially, right? We got a late start because after that, when a company dies, everybody's scattering and taking their people and doing all that stuff. It took us 30 days to get going. So we end up getting 1,100 people, you know, in like the first, I would say like 20 days, right? Yeah. Or whatever. Started getting a little stagnant or whatever, right? But because we was making money and the stuff that was going on, you know, Dominique Barbie came in. You know, I don't know if you're aware, but you know, me and her still cool. We're good or whatever, you know. But at that time, we had a little beef going on, and it wasn't that we had a beef. It's just like our downlines was saying that we was talking about each other, and we really wasn't talking about each other, right? Yeah. But we didn't realize it at the time, so we wasn't cool or whatever. And that's because we didn't pick up the phone and talk to each other. We had picked up the phone and all that and squash. Yeah. But long story short, she came in and she didn't want to be up under me. You know, she had to. So she made a big ass fuss about not being up under me, you know. all because of that, you know. And so that cost me. Remember, when you're starting these companies, millions of dollars are at stake.
Right.
Right. So yes, I'm making $3.50 off every one of her people. She came in and put 8,000 people in. But them 8,000 people in was supposed to go up under me and pay me in the company.
Yeah.
You know, so that was the issue. You know, millions of dollars at stake here, right? So, anyways, you know, moving forward, that company falls in 7 months into it and sells the company, sells the downline, the customer base to iMarkets Live. So when they sold the company, that kind of left me with nothing, like nothing. So I didn't have no residuals coming in because I went all in with that company. I'm living in Miami. I got all these expenses. I have a baby on the way, like literally a baby on the way at that time.
Yeah.
And so I was stressed out more than I ever was stressed out before. You know, I was making investments and stuff that wasn't working out. You know, 12 bands on a Toro. You know, 6 bands on an Airbnb with one of my boys. You know, I ain't gonna say his name, but with him. But for whatever reason, that didn't work out. So the money was just gone. Crypto was going down. A lot of going bad for me. So, you know, let me take it back 1 second. So towards the end of the Tradera moment, when I was making the $100,000 a month, right? I realized a key critical factor that you have to look like the culture.
Okay.
Like, you know,
Explain
us
more
people.
what that mean? Look like the culture. What does that mean?
Black people, we got to embrace our culture. Is it right all the time? No, it's not right. It's majority wrong most of the time, right? But we got to embrace that culture. Why go against everything, right? Okay. So, you know what? I looked at what they was doing at iMarkets Live. I went to the clubs, and I seen what was going on in the sections. And I realized, like, I'm going in clubs. I'm making $100,000 a month. And these has got like crazy, like, I'm blinded by their eyes. You feel me? So, you know, I go into a jeweler store. I got a video on my Instagram page, but long story short, literally spent probably $60,000, like one WAPO. I never did nothing like that before. $60,000 on jewelry. This is before Tradera brought me to watch, right? And so I knew at that point I had to keep up with the culture, you know. And I seen I am doing that.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, would you say that's a positive or negative in terms of spending $60,000 on jewelry?
Negative, because diamonds aren't worth anything. That's what I figured out. So when I went back to sell them, I couldn't get nothing for it. So diamonds aren't worth anything. So for the people out there that's gonna go out and buy, you know, crazy ice and bust down stuff or whatever, remember you're not gonna get that when you go back and resell it. You know. And so that's what I didn't know. I thought, you know, hey, I bought this $30,000 chain. I can go back and sell it for at least 20. Yeah. You know. Yeah. But when they want to give you back 3, it's like, you know, it's whatever, right? And so I didn't realize that, you know, and I still, you know, I just iced my girl down, you know, over there, you know. So I
see
still
Diamond over there. I see it.
Yeah, I still, you know, indulge. But if I would have knew what I knew now, what I did know. And so that's what I say, when you first get money, people, you know, they're able to see that and sniff on that and prey on you, right? And so, long story short, so when we get to where I have no money really coming in or whatever, I still look like money. And I remember Chad telling me, like, yo, you got to buy one thing a month, like one fire-ass thing a month, because in like 2 years, like, you just look like, you know, whatever, you know? Yeah. And so you can have a dime in your bank account, but you won't look like that, right? And so I always followed that. And so, like, you know, for me, you know, anywhere I go, I'm dressed for every situation or whatever. So anywhere I go, I'm always going to be designered up or whatever, just because I have years. What people don't realize is, okay, y'all know I love Jordans. Y'all know I love Jordans. Like, I love Jordans, but those Jordans will last you if you don't wear them longer. But if you wear them often, maybe 5-6 months, right? You know, but them designer shoes that you paid $1,000 for, you know, you can wear them 10 years from now. Right. And they still in fashion and they last longer. They're built longer. Yeah. And so, you know, the biggest thing is because we're in sales. So if you look like I need your money to pay my rent, then it's like people won't participate as much. I don't know why. But if you look like you don't need their money and you really don't care about, the money they're giving you, they give you more money.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's like that. I don't get it or whatever, because everybody know I'm the underdog, and so this is my first podcast, and
That's
so
good.
we'll get into that, and it's my first podcast, but moving on with the story, so long story short, I find myself in a very precarious situation because I don't have nothing coming in. I'm losing money all over the place. Probably lost over $100,000 in investing. So many people are, oh man, where are you splurging? Man, I've lost way more money investing than I ever have splurging. I've lost way more money investing than I ever have splurging.
If you had to put a number on it, what would you say?
The biggest loss I can see is when I lost crypto, when I lost money in crypto in like 2021 maybe. And I lost probably like $50,000, bro.
Oh, wow.
$50,000 I lost with crypto. $50,000. That 75 grand that Trade Era took, I ended up getting that back. They ended up releasing that out the e-wallet. Yeah. So I got that or whatever, and I invested some of that into crypto, in which I lost. Yeah. And so at that point, I bought my baby mama dog, right? And I didn't even want the dog. I was living in a $5,000 a month penthouse. I didn't want a dog. I had brand new furniture. And so she wanted a dog, a toy put. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand it at all. But she wanted a dog. So I got her a dog, right? Okay. Got her a dog. So initially when I seen that dog, that dog was worth about $7,000 in the store. I didn't know dogs cost that much. I bought like $3,000. I'm in Miami, remember? Yeah. So I bought like $3,000, thinking I'm gonna be straight. I'm gonna get my girl a dog or whatever. It's $7,000. I couldn't make it make sense, so I walked up out of there, bro. I can't make it make sense. Yeah. So moving forward, I ended up buying a different dog at a different store later. Ended up getting cool with the dog, loving the dog, like feeling really good about the dog, all that good stuff. And so long story short or whatever, after all them bad investments, it's crazy because I looked at the dog that I had and I said, okay, I got so much attention with the dog. I said, okay, you're an asset at the end of the day. Okay. I said, okay, you're an asset, And I seen where network marketing was going, bro. Network marketing was going down. Nobody believed me. I was telling them it was going down. We need to do something else. Like, let's take our money. Let's get a club. To the restaurant, let's do whatever. Yeah. Nobody would believe it. Nobody would hear it. And if people thought I was negative, right? That's so cool. So I was like, let's sell dogs, right? Because I'm sitting in my living room and I'm like, all right, so you can produce more assets. You're worth money, and you can produce more assets. And so when I realized you can produce more assets, I said, okay. I may not be able to get $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for this dog, but this one girl dog can produce me 20 more assets in her lifetime that I can sell and make money off of. Yeah, and I already like dogs, right? Pit bulls and Rottweilers all my life, right? So at that point, I said, okay, how many girls does it take to pay my mortgage or my rent, right? And I figured out it takes 2.5 to 3 girls to pay my mortgage and rent. Okay. By the puppies they produce. Right. I can get up to $20,000 for 1 litter. 1 litter of puppies, I get $20,000. Once I realized, and really I get more. Really I get more. And once I realized that, and so a house, right? You buy a house, it grows as an asset or it depreciates, right? And you sell it, it's over with, right? Exactly. This dog, if it's a female dog, I purchased this dog, right? Yep. And in 1 year, it can have puppies. And I can make more dogs, more assets. Yeah. And I sell those assets, and I make money. It don't matter if I make $5,000 or $1,000. I make 5 puppies, and I sell them for $1,000. It's $5,000. There you go. But if I make 5 puppies and I sell them for $5,000, that's $25,000. There you go. Either way, it's an asset. Yeah. So then I learned, okay, everything I'm investing is fast money. That worked for me at one point, but when it started burning me, it burnt me too bad. So I had to get back to 1 + 1 = 2. And so then I started breeding these dogs, right? I started buying dogs. I started buying them. And so I spent so much money buying dogs that I had to wait a year that I started developing relationships with breeders, right?
Yeah, I
With
was
the
just gonna
breeders.
ask you that, Ray. How long does it take them to start breeding?
Okay, so you can always do the first heat if the dog's at 10 months.
Okay.
So some people think you gotta wait 2 years. You can do the first heat. You gotta be at least 10 months old.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's the best heat. That's
Okay.
the best one.
Okay.
You know, and so these little tiny dogs, poodles, they don't shed at all. They're the smartest dogs in the world. They learn over 400 commands. The average dog learns between 35 and 70.
Oh wow.
That makes them the most intelligent dog. It makes them the most commonly used dog in dog shows
Yep.
because they're so much easier to train, and it just makes it easier for you to train your dog, right?
Gotcha.
And so the average dog learns between 35 and 70 commands.
Yeah.
So they mix poodle with everything because it makes them smarter and not shed. Maltipoo, golden doodle, labradoodle, cavapoo, maltipoo, pompoo, cockapoo, labradoodle, bernedoodle. The list goes on. The dogs mix with poodle, but there's no other dog mixed with any other dog more than poodle. You know, at the end of the day, I didn't know all of this stuff. I didn't know that there's rare poodles. Right now, I'm holding a teacup poodle. On teacup poodle is this dog. I bred this dog myself, so I brought this dog here. I bred this dog myself. The dog's father is 3.5 pounds. The dog's mother is 5 pounds. It's called teacup poodle. Anything under 6 pounds. Anything a dog under 6 pounds is like a small dog. It's like a hamster. You know, it's a tiny dog. It's worth a lot of money. Yeah, I didn't know that, and so I didn't know that those dogs were rare. When I figured that out, I started specializing, right? And so I only do poodles. I don't do 27 different types of dogs. Yeah. Most stores were not breeders. They're just dog flippers. They sell 27 different types of dogs. I sell one breed of dog or whatever.
Why do you call them toy poodles?
Because the size, right? Gotcha. So the AKC name is toy poodle if the dog is anywhere between 6 to 10 pounds. And it's a mini poodle if it's over 10 pounds. And it's a standard poodle if it's over, I want to say 35.
Gotcha.
We only do small dogs. So we do mini poodles, toy poodles, and teacup poodles. Yeah. Because they're smaller, fit in apartments. You don't always have to walk them. This dog uses the puppy pad. Probably has to go to the bathroom now. We didn't even go to the bathroom when we were outside because there's no puppy pad.
And I'm going to stop you there real quick, right? Chad was on an episode some weeks ago with us, and he was saying he was a potential partner, I guess, with you at one time in the business. And, a partner. And he said that he just didn't like the fact of having to deal with puppies, using the bathroom, and having to discipline them and things of that nature. I mean, what would you say to that?
I'm glad you asked that. So if you're not a dog person, you know, it doesn't matter how much money is gonna come up out of it. You know, it's just not gonna be you. So that was my story of how I got started, right? So, you know, I love dogs, so it was easy for me. So not only was I able to, you know, lay the foundation of how to take care of the dogs, right? And how to breed the dogs and know, you know, what proper value is and all that other good stuff or whatever, right? I figured out logistics of how to import dogs because we get dogs from all over the world, right? Yeah. And so for the people here who are not dog people, right? You know, at the time I wasn't ready for Chad. I was not ready for Chad, right? My dreams, my thoughts, it wasn't where I am now. I didn't know the potential of what I was doing could get me here right now. I didn't know that. I had no clue. You know, so all I knew was breeding the dogs. Right. And so that's not for everybody. You don't have to breed dogs to make money. Right. And so there's plenty of money to be made. You know, fancy toy poodles were $1 million a year business, multi-million-dollar a year business with the proof. I can show it right now. Go ahead. You know, and so with that being said, you know, we're not going to show the yearly total, but we'll show you what we did over a couple of months. And, you know, you cannot. You know, you can't fake the funk. You know, you just can't fake it. It is what it is. Yep. You know, you either make it or you don't. You know, the numbers, the computer's not going to lie for you. You know, at the end of the day, they're not going to lie for you. Absolutely. You know, and so long story short or whatever, you know, when I got involved, I didn't realize all the money that you can make from it. I just was looking at it from a position of, okay, MLM keeps, messing up and failing and all that other good stuff, right?
Yeah, a lot of roller coasters. We've even seen in this episode of you talking about companies that's been built up, closed down, and so now you
A
started your own
lot,
thing.
a lot of roller coasters, bro. A lot of roller coasters. A lot of roller coasters I've been through with MLM. And so I'm like, we have to get our income like off of MLM, right? And whether that's a recruiting or affiliate lead or whatever, we have to get our money off that. But I wasn't ready for him. My business was not as defined or whatever. And so long story short, taking care of puppies is not for everybody. And that's why we have franchise options. We have franchise options, guys. Like I said, we're not going to show everything, but you guys can see, it is what it is. Numbers don't lie, And these were, our last quarter numbers. These are our last quarter numbers. For anybody who wants to invest in a franchise that's guaranteed to make money, right? This is the time. Let me know if y'all got that good and all that. Because, like I said, numbers don't lie. They don't.
Do we got the Zoom in? Okay, gotcha.
And so I think this is big enough for people to want to look, because if you own a home or you have to pay rent, and you're a dog lover, then your dog can pay your bills. Your dog can pay your rent, right? And so that's why I got into it. When I got into it, I sold so many dogs, it got too popular. I was doing this from the house because, we work from home. Even when I got a store, people were telling me, oh, you got to be there.
Because you got a brick and mortar, right?
I got a brick and mortar, yeah. It's like, oh, you got to be there every day. You're going to work again.
Yeah.
Right? And it's so much more fulfilling because now I can get an MLM. When I told everybody, yo, we need to do our own thing. And now I can get an MLM and it's extra money for me,
Gotcha.
if I get in or whatever. But, still got to decide, is this worth me putting my time into? So I have to get paid. I'm like one of the few people, when we sit at a table full of bosses, right? When you get at a table with this MLM stuff and a company just started and it's all these people trying to get money and get contracts, right? I have the best accolade because I built another company outside of MLM to $1 million the same way. $1 million a year, millions of dollars a year, the same way I built MLM. Nobody else can sit at the table and say that.
We got to get into another episode on that.
We definitely
how you
do.
Built, like, because you went to 7 figures in MLM, you went to 7 figures in e-commerce at one time, and then now you're doing the same thing when it comes to dogs and breeding. You're doing the same thing. So it's something there, and we'll get more into that in another episode.
And we got to, bro. Yeah. We got to. And so once I realized that exchange between asset and dollars, things took off for me. And so that's not what they're teaching you in MLM. That's what I want people to realize. Use MLM to get what you want. But these leaders, these so-called leaders, right, they'll lose their check and they'll go get a job and won't tell you. You never know they got a job. Yeah. I know. I have no choice to know. You know, I'm recruiting them. At the end of the day. And so there's nothing wrong with getting a job. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that is bad. All I'm saying is when you get into a situation, you have to know what's going on so you can make the best decisions, right? And don't not join somebody because they're working a job. Like
any leaders have reached out to you to want to work with you in terms of now the toy poodle business? That was it. Top earners.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So when I first brought up poodles, I'm glad you asked that. People say, "Oh, let me see how that works for you in 6 months." Right? People said, "Oh man, he's going broke. He's selling dogs." Right? And guess what? The one I can name. Well, I'm not gonna say his name, but the one person that said, "Oh yeah, he's going broke." Guess what he's doing right now?
What's that?
He's broke.
Oh,
he's broke.
Wow.
He's broke. He's super broke. And so I don't even talk about people like that, to be honest with you. That's not even my, but, I don't forget. Yeah. I don't forget, And so if you said that about me and you watching this interview, then it's for you. This is for you. This is for you. If you said, yo, let me see how this works for you. He going broke. If you had some shit to talk about my dogs, you feel me? I'm making millions a year. You feel me? I have $30,000 worth of ice on. What do you have on? Where are you going? What are you doing?
Right.
These are real questions.
And we'll get ready to wrap in a second. Here's the thing, though.
You know, I don't forget, and it stings me still to today.
Let me
Stings
go
me
this too.
that you would talk about me like
I've
that.
seen you on the blogs on Instagram, right? In terms of the toy poodle business, and also with different celebrities. Talk a little bit about that, man. Like you going like literally viral on the gram, and also as well some of these celebrities, man, who've been coming through.
That's the one thing about an asset, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want a celebrity to do something for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you have to pay what? An asset money, right? But since I own assets, then my promo can be this, because this is worth $5,000. Wow. Right?
Yeah.
I don't have to put $5,000 out my pocket, but this is worth $5,000. For you to get this, you got to pay somebody. To get something like this, you got to pay somebody. Yeah. Right? You got to pay somebody. It's the only way it's gonna work. Only way you gonna get one of these. They're expensive. They're not just gonna they're not just gonna give you the dog for free because they have no incentive. To give it. But I do. So we can both help each other. You know? And so I was able to set up certain situations. I've been on the scenes of Love and Hip Hop, guys. I've been on the scenes. And so, I wish I could put more out there right now, but I feel like that'll make another podcast or whatever. But
yeah, I seen you with Lil Woody, man.
Yeah, Lil Woody. Yo, that's my dog, bro. He cool, Woody, man. He cool. Woody. Yo, that's my dog, man. We sold the Lucci baby mom while not baby mom's sister while she was in jail. Yeah. We got the puppy was for his daughter, and I'm glad he's out right now. Good dude, man, good dude. Just how everything came about, I could tell the character of that type of person. You know, at the end of the day or whatever, he knew he was getting out. When we was talking, this was in December, or whatever. But I just want to kind of go back to I've been the underdog, guys. I don't know how you looking at me now, like whatever. But I'm still the underdog. I've always been the underdog, And I gotta put this story. This is my first podcast. This should not be my first podcast. You wanna know why? Because my boy David. You feel me? Everybody named David. My boy David. And no hate. No, I love you, bro. Like you my boy. I'm still gonna do business with you. All that. No love is lost. But I'm like, yo, let's do a podcast, man. I have so much to put towards. I give a dog away and all that good stuff. Gerald called me. Hey, come on, you ain't got to do nothing. Just come on, just tell your story. know, but somebody I spent thousands of dollars in shirts and all types of stuff. At the end of the day, it's like, bro.
Had the kiosk up in
and I fought with him, man. That's still my boy, man. No love lost. You can't take business personal, but I feel like my story is much stronger than you're putting MLM people on there. Yeah, these MLM people, I get it. You put MLM people on, bro. I built traditional business, bro, and I did MLM. I aced all of them. You did too. You had traditional business, right? Yeah, you aced all that. Right. So you know how hard it is.
Right.
It ain't easy.
Right.
I did it all.
Yeah.
And you didn't even look at what I sent you. I sent them my IG. Guys, Fancy Toy Poodles. Make sure you go add that. On Instagram, Fancy Toy Poodles, IG, right?
Yep.
We have almost 100,000 followers. Almost 100,000 followers on TikTok, right? Yep. And so, long story short, you didn't even look at my stuff. So I had to send my numbers, days later, I wait days later to reach out. I sent you my numbers. You called me 8 minutes after I sent you my numbers. And like I said, no shade, no hate. Like, I love my boy, bro. I'm still going to do business with him. Like, ain't no love lost. It's my story. Right. You feel me? I got to tell my story.
No, you got to tell the real, bro.
At the end of the day. And so you didn't even look at that stuff. So we talk on the phone. I'm telling you my deal. And then now you look at it. And now you're like, oh, that's how I can tell you didn't look at my stuff. Yeah. But either way, you were supposed to call me back and call me back. Yeah. At the end of the day. And so, does that hurt me?
Let me interject real quick. I'm just going to say this. That's part of the reason I brought the Rise of the 1% podcast back. And my brother Antonio, Rise Media, behind the camera, say the same thing. Is because, I felt like, for one, I wasn't getting invited on certain podcasts.
As you should have.
And, I had maybe one or two people reach out to me potentially about being co-host. But I was like, dang. And so I had people saying, Jared, I think you need to bring the Rise of the 1% podcast back, man, because he had something great going there. And not only that, giving shine on those who are doing great things, who've been very successful, but not getting invited on these platforms. And that's part of the reason I brought this podcast back.
I'm glad you did,
Yeah,
bro.
so I agree with everything you saying there, 100%, man. And I'm glad you was able to come on here, man, and do your thing.
And that's why my story is like, you guys gotta understand, like, nobody cares about you like that. You know, they're all gonna appeal to your self interest. It's 48 laws, you know, and so it doesn't matter how well you're doing if you can't appeal to that person's self interest. Then sometimes it is what it is. And so that's why it's business. You can't take business with personal. You know, you can't mix that. You know, so we ain't got no problems over it.
Yep.
But you know what? It's the story, and people need to know, because where I'm at, earning multi-million dollars a year.
Yep.
You know, with my poodle business, with my well, I can't say legitimate because all my business have been. All of our business is legitimate,
Right.
but it's a brick and mortar business, which is tougher. I have expenses.
Yeah.
I don't make 100% profit. You do MLM, you're making damn near 100% profit.
Right.
I don't do that. I gotta pay payroll.
Yep.
You feel me?
Yeah.
I gotta deposit money in the account tonight
Yeah.
to pay payroll, right?
Yeah.
I gotta pay for inventory. I gotta pay for the dogs I reset, all that. You know, yeah, I breed them, and it's free when I breed them. But you know, like, compared to the amount of dogs we sell, it is what it is. So, what I'm saying is, you know, it's people out there that know they're capable of more. You know, you're capable of more.
Yeah.
You know that. You're aware of that. You know that the urge and all that feeling is burning deep down inside,
Yep.
right? But you ain't achieved that yet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And just because you ain't achieved it, it ain't because you ain't working hard enough. Because you can work harder than, you know, that whole, like, you got to have a great work ethic.
There you go.
You ain't getting nowhere without that.
Exactly.
But it's all about who you know
Mm.
and how you use the relationships you know.
Yep.
Certain people burn bridges too quick. They feel
Yeah.
tried too quick.
Yeah.
They feel disrespected too quick,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that David situation, you know, with Shan's, that, you know, like, you know, tap my ego a little bit. Yeah, it did. It did. Because I'm going to look at your last few hosts, and I'm making more money than them.
Ooh.
You know, like,
Oh, man.
it is what it is, you know, at the end of the day. And so it's like, who's more interesting? Like, this literally, me doing this,
Yeah.
like, is like very interesting. It's very interesting, right? A lot of people like dogs.
Yeah.
More people like dogs than MLM,
Yeah.
you know? And so, you know, I would think it would tap in, and we offer to give a dog out. But like I said, I'm not mad. I'm just telling a story, you
Right.
know, of what, you know, has been going on. And,
Yeah.
you know, like I said, you know, if he does invite me later, we can talk about it or whatever. It's nothing personal or whatever. He's building his business, I'm building mine. You know, but at the end of the day, is, you know, I still felt like, yo, you know, like, I'm your boy. I'm your boy. So
We all known each other for some years.
yeah.
David was in vacation with us.
Yeah, vacation, you know.
Yeah, he was in vacation with us, yeah.
And-
He was doing the Sleepers for Suckers. This is apparel and all that. Yeah, he was in there with us. Yeah,
And so, you know, it's always gonna be like that, you know, when you're making your biggest explosion, right, in
Yeah.
your life, right?
right.
You know, even though you've made it, there's gonna be people looking at you like you ain't made it,
Mm.
like you're not good enough, right? You ain't been doing it long enough,
Yeah.
you know. And you know, sometimes we take all that stuff personal, and then we let that destroy relationships. And so that's gonna be the biggest thing. And that's where ego comes in at. Like,
Yeah.
F him because I can't. Nah, it ain't like that. You know, like, I'm not like mad or whatever. Yeah, did it tap the ego? Yeah, it did. It did. You know, but at the end of the day, does it make me not want to do business? No. You know, green is money,
Yep.
right? And so, but you know, kind of moving forward or whatever. So.
And Ray, hold your thought real quick. Because I know, like I said, we about to grade it rap, but and whatever you was about to cover is fine. I just want to make sure we get this out. Because Ray, I tell you this, I wanted to address this in this conversation. I told myself I was going to address it. You went on times rants on social media about situations with the mother of your daughter. And so, can we speak a little bit about what caused, maybe, you know, whatever you want to share, you know, whatever you want to share. In regards to what maybe caused that, any advice you maybe could give to some of the brothers out there might be going through similar situations. I'll let you share there. And then, of course, the last thing you wanted to talk about as well before we ready to close out.
No problem. I'm glad you brought that up because that's what made me who I am today. So for people who don't know, I got full custody of my daughter. You know, I have full custody of my daughter, and no, my baby mom is not, she's not no drug addict or anything like that.
Okay.
Gotcha. or whatever. So it's not that type of situation. And I honestly don't, where I am in my life, versus like when that was happening or whatever is like kind of like night and day or whatever. I was still struggling to deal with ego and, I had an anger problem, at the end of the day that I already been dealing with. Yeah. And I feel like, now, like I'm more equipped, like I'm more like thoughtful now than where I was before. So when that happened to me, I just could never see myself in a situation like that, and so I felt like deep betrayal. And so I wasn't able to see my daughter for long periods of time. I wasn't able to talk to my daughter, knowing that I don't know what she's doing, who's around her, all that good stuff, how she's eating. I don't know all of that stuff. And I'm not saying like her mom loves her and she does a great job as a mom, but you move her from a stable environment to an unstable environment in a different state. And it's a problem. Like I ended the curse of poverty for my lineage of my family. Okay. My lineage, I ended the curse of poverty. Yeah. Right? And so my child they're gonna be raised under, my tutelage because they're never gonna go through what I went through. Yeah. Right? Even if I gotta go through it again, they're not gonna go through it. Because they're going to understand, why certain things. They're not going to get to 18 and it's like, good luck. No, they're going to know why I got to hold. If I can't buy something 3 times, I'm not swiping it on my credit. They're not going to be scared of credit. People are scared of credit. What the hell are you scared of credit for? Use it the right way, you get great benefits from it. Yeah. Right? But people are scared to get credit cards and scared because you don't know how to use it. You ain't been taught. Ain't nothing wrong with it. You just ain't been taught. I ain't either, Yeah. And so, that's what I'm looking forward to. I want her around the right people. Gotcha. Because we already know about that law of the circle, bro. Yep. I want her around the right people. I want her around the right influences. I want her busy. I want her in activities. Yeah. So it's a lot. And I'm not saying that her mom can't do that or whatever, but I made my last name something. My last name was nothing. Nothing. Before I made it something. You can Wikipedia me, but you couldn't do that 2 years ago. Wow. That's huge, bro. And so with that being said, we have to take care of that. We work too hard for that, right? Yep. And so more so important, I need my daughter to not go through and not understand the things that I didn't understand. And so with the communication being how it was and the relationship being how it was, and we all know a cycle, family cycles and all that good stuff, I can't be for certain that same cycle isn't going to be repeated. I can't. I'm just keeping it real with y'all. Yeah. My daughter can't mix with everything. When she gets 16, 17, want to talk about boys and stuff, you can't mix with everything. That's nasty. You can't mix with everything. Yeah. You got to mix with something that's, that got something to that last name. Right. And if you ever do fall in love with somebody and it's different, then that man taking our last name because he didn't make shit of his last name. Right. You're not about to take what I work for and put it under somebody else's family last name. It's not going to happen. It's not what I worked this for. It's not what I gave my life for. Yeah. And she's going to understand that, well before she start even looking at boys. She's going to know, oh, you're nasty. You feel me? Your last name is nasty. It's nasty. It's disgusting. Wow. We can't mix with you.
Yeah.
I can't be your boyfriend. I mean, your girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know, because my dad say we can't mix with you.
Mm.
But you know what, though? Whatever boy do want to be with her, he gonna get right. And he gonna hear what she's saying. And he gonna realize, I gotta make something of my last name if he ain't already. And he gonna go do that. Whether he be with her or not.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
He's gonna know what the expectation is. So it's not just gonna change her, it's gonna change everybody.
Yeah.
You know, in or around her friends and their expectations.
Right.
You know, we not about that. My daughter's not about to be living her life on boats and you know. And don't get me wrong, I'm not giving her anything. When she gets to a certain age, she's gonna have to work for everything. Cause like y'all don't understand. Like we know we 80s babies. We know.
Right.
We've been through that. You feel me?
Yeah.
We've been through.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have you know that picking out you go back up to the bus stop and whip his ass. That's what we had to deal with.
Yeah.
You can't do that no more. You're gonna go to jail.
Yeah.
But we had to do that. You know, nah, you go right back up there and whoop his ass. Or I'm gonna whoop your ass.
Right.
You feel me?
Exactly.
No matter how big you gotta go do that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You gotta go handle that.
Yeah.
You know, these kids nowadays, they not raised like that. And you can't raise them like that. So, you know, it is a different time. But to kind of like sum it up is my daughter needs to know how to live in a changing, you know, environment. And you know, with what you preach on about multiple streams of income, investing in yourself is something that people need to know. Because if they don't, a job alone, unless you got just a great paying job, is not just only gonna cut it if you want a family.
Yeah.
You know, if you want a family, you want to take care of that woman over there.
Right.
You know, I'm just keeping it real. You know, where was the man's position 200 years ago? You know, they was going out and hunt and make the home, build the home, build the home, build the furniture.
Yep.
You know, grab the meat.
Exactly.
You know, hunt the meat.
There you go.
You know, the woman cook the meat. The woman, you know, take care of the family, build the home. You not build the home, but you know, y'all know what I mean. You know, make the home what it is to be home, right? You know, take care of the kids, keep things straight.
Yep.
But somebody had to go out there and hunt and fight and do all that, right? And so, you know, that's where a lot of people like they get off on that 50-50.
I was finna ask you that.
Glad you did.
And I know we about to ready to close out, but I was finna ask you, what do you think? Because this has been a big thing on the internet, the 50-50 thing of the man giving 50, the woman giving 50, or the man covering 100% of the bills. What is your thoughts on that?
Unless you that one lucky ass, you're not gonna get the woman that you want to be with. You know, you just gotta be that one. And it's people out there, they do it. You know, it is what it is. You know, I'm not that lucky ass. You know, at the end of the day, but what I'm telling you is, if you cannot make that woman feel, back in the day, you feel me? I'm just keeping it real. Back in the day, you know, you had to have a rank within a city or a community. Yeah. You feel me? Yeah. Or just plain out, just be the biggest, strongest. Yeah. That's the only way that female gonna feel secure with you. You know, if you got rank and you got rank, you know, guard go get his ass. You feel me? Yeah. It is what it is. But nowadays, it's changed. So how you think you gonna have a female, right? That's honestly value probably a little bit more than yours. You see what I'm saying? By her being a female, you know, how you gonna have her pay 50% and think that you're gonna have any type of control or any type of like leverage or any type of, what I mean by control and leverage, I don't mean like evil stuff. I mean like, okay, I have a leg at this table, right? You know, if your woman making more money than you, she's gonna soon see no need for you, right? Because there's other people making more money than you that can do more stuff with her that she may want to do. Okay. And those, you know, that stuff. That's why.
What about though? I gotta ask a question about that though. What about though for some of the men that feel like, hey, this woman wasn't with me jumping in the gym for me to build my empire and coming in and I'm paying 100% of the bills. A lot of times, those are the men that tend to step out. And what I mean by that, they have multiple women. So what do you think about that?
And if she's not worth, like, if she's not putting in, you know, if she's not putting in what she need to put in, you know, like if she's not equating that You know, and I've been in this situation. Like if she's not putting in, if you're doing everything and it's just you,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
And she's just whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then yeah, I mean, at this point, everything's gonna be fully known with me. Like you know, my interest's gonna be off. I'm gonna be wanting to do other things. It's gonna be something you're gonna see. It's not gonna be something that's night and day.
Yeah.
You're gonna see like, okay, my interest is elsewhere.
Mm.
Because why wouldn't they be?
Mm.
You know, and so that's why some women got to step it up too.
Okay.
But the biggest thing is men have to understand that you're easily replaceable, more so than the woman. You know,
why would you say that?
Because okay, so women get their flowers at 18.
Okay.
They got their flowers, right?
Right.
You know, men 50, 40, 30, 35, 25, 20 will talk to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they get their flowers. You know, a grown man, 18, you get no flowers.
That's true.
That female walking down the street in the rain,
right?
Every car is gonna stop.
Right. She already has value. Men have to build value.
They gotta build their value.
Right.
Exactly. So that beats up our soul and our spirit, and our mental, and it beats us up.
Yeah.
You know, it's a beat up, and women don't they don't see that because they've had their glory, they've had their flowers since at 18. They don't understand that, but we didn't. We're just, you know, at the end of the day, ain't nobody stopping a car for us because we in the rain. Because when you either a YN, right? You're YN, you cry, whatever, keep going. Yeah. Or if you're too old, then you're a threat. Right. You're a 30-year-old man walking down the street. Right. Who's stopping for that, right? And so a man doesn't get their flowers until they're about 30 when they're into their career.
I agree.
Right?
100%. I agree with that.
And so at the end of the day, you know, it's a big what you call it's a big difference.
Well, I want to say this though before we wrap though, because maybe some men looking at this. My thing is this, right? So what you're saying is if a man, because like I say, this has been the gender war on the internet for probably the last year, 2 years, whatever. If a man cannot fulfill 100% of the bills, they probably shouldn't be dating. That's what you're saying? They need to be focusing in on the career. And
for sure.
They don't need to be dating.
For sure.
100%. That's what your opinion is.
For sure. Well, I wouldn't say not date.
Okay.
But don't take it too personal. You know, I've been cheated on. Y'all don't understand. I've been cheated. I had females cheat on me. I'm not scared to talk about it.
That was one of my
I ain't scared to talk about it. I've had females cheat on me. So, all that money stuff always don't matter. But what I'm saying is to make that woman feel secure is a different age. You got to understand, like, you know, you couldn't even travel 200 years ago. Because, you know, me and G in the woods, we waiting for you to come through there. Because we're going to take it all. You know, Millhouse, he got his stuff. We gonna take it. That's how we live. Is pirates, bandits, right? You can't move. You gonna move. You gonna move out like gold. There wasn't no banks. Y'all gotta understand, like how it was 200 years ago, right? So how that woman gonna feel safe? You gotta be able to protect her, right? Yeah. Nowadays it's different. Yeah, you might have to protect her every now and then, but come on now, are you really gonna have to like literally physically protect a woman nowadays? No. But what you are gonna have to do is take care of them, right, and make them feel comfortable and secure. Yeah. And if you can't provide that, or not provide that, because most people can't, a lot of men can't provide that. But if you don't want to, then she may look at this as, okay, this isn't a secure situation. Anything can happen. And so she's gonna look toward the more secure situation. That don't mean she a gold digger. You feel me? Yeah, they out there. But in today's society, it's just a little bit different. And so, hey, if you got a 50-50 working relationship, hey, don't change it. You know, do you. You know, that's working for y'all. But what I'm saying is don't come into this situation expecting that from her. Because if you do, you might lose out on the right one, you know, at the end of the day, because everybody wasn't built like that. Yeah. You know. And so that's something I even had to realize, you know. Like, I used to go so hard on my women doing MLM that I used to destroy relationships. And so now I don't care if you do the MLM or not. You ain't got to do my business. You know, you ain't got to do my business. You ain't got to do it. I don't care if you do it or not. You know. And so I would just tell people to sum all of that up or whatever. If you're coming in 50-50, then you've literally, out of the percentage, if it's 100% of females that you were compatible with, you've literally limited that down to probably like less than 10%. Because she can like you and ape in or whatever, but when she sees, like, if you're irresponsible or not secure, what you think gonna happen? You know, look, I gotta pay my own bills, right? I gotta pay my own bills. You know, you live, but you gotta pay your own bills, right? So if I gotta pay my own bills and you live with me, then I still gotta pay my own bills, right? You know. Now I get it. We want to do some math shit, and okay, let's go in on and whatever. We have some high stage of income, but most people's situation is not like that. You know. And so I think, like, a lot of men gotta kind of recognize that. You know, like, hey, you know, you're still supposed to have a secure female, and just because you might be the biggest and baddest, that don't make her secure in today's day and age. You know, honestly, you know, having that attitude normally end you up in jail, but you know, it's just something that I think people don't realize. You know, they don't think about. Times is changing. If you're not prepared for it, then you know, it is what it is. You know.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I definitely want to implore everybody to, you know, add me on Instagram, Fancy Toy Poodles. Fancy Toy Poodles on Instagram, Fancy Toy Poodles on TikTok, right? The Instagram is verified, has a blue check. We have 2 Instagram accounts. But our main page is Fancy Toy Poodles. We have almost 100,000 followers. Right now, currently, we have the hottest puppy store in the country. You know, I don't know of one hotter than ours. We do rare puppies, you know, at the end of the day. And so we do provide business opportunities for people, too, who want to know about it, right? And so for people who want to make money, you know, who do love dogs, right? You know, you guys can get a female dog from us. Our male dog, we get the dog pregnant. We only want one dog from the litter. And you can sell the other puppies at our store for full price, right? So let's say you get 5 puppies. You get one, you have 4. You sell them for $4,000 a piece. That's $16,000. Am I right or wrong?
Money.
Right?
Yeah.
And so why do you need us? Because most people who just start off with the litter, they're not going to get full price, right? But we will. And so we can help people, you know, make some money and put some money up for savings, or, you know, make a down payment on a home, or, you know, pay off some debt. At the end of the day, we can definitely help you with the asset, right? Because these dogs are definitely assets. And so that's for everybody, right? You know, and franchise opportunities, if you're not a dog lover and you just want to make money and leverage your money and make money, we have those options too, where you don't have to have really much, you know, hand involved, right? And you're still collecting your checks. So all of that stuff is out there, you guys. I really want to implore people before we hop off to, you know, stretch their boundaries, right? You know, try to do more than average, right? You gotta understand, if I start playing basketball, if I practice more than the average person, I'm gonna be better than the average.
And stop there real quick, right? Because you going into what my last question was gonna be, which is I ask all the guests that come on this podcast, what is the 1% to you? You know, they say the 1% to 99%.
The 1% is obsessed at like money. Grant Cardone said the 1% is obsessed. They're obsessed with money and lifestyle and family and all of that combined. You cannot be obsessed by one thing. It has to be a drive, right? If you're not obsessed, people make it seem like, oh, you're obsessed with this. Oh, well, whatever. You're this type of person. Nah, F that. You're not obsessed with and that's why you don't have You feel me? You need to be obsessed with something. You feel me? You're not obsessed with your woman. You're not obsessed with your kids. You ain't obsessed with your job. You ain't obsessed with life. So you're doing this that just, you know, somebody just, y'all know, everybody know, if you're watching this, you can look at somebody and tell, like, you just got what life gave you. You're not obsessed with
Right.
If you're not obsessed with it, you're gonna get whatever life gives you.
Yeah.
You'll be obsessed with it. You know what I mean? And you could be obsessed with multiple things. You don't have to be obsessed with one thing. You need to be obsessed with success. You need to be obsessed with life. You need to be obsessed with family. You need to be obsessed with your wife or whatever. You know, you need to be obsessed with your kids. You need to be obsessed with all of that, because then that's the only way you're gonna put the work into it.
There you go.
But you know, you got people that don't know what they want. You know, they don't know what they want, so they ain't obsessed with nothing. So then they're dissatisfied because not putting all in nothing.
Right.
You're only satisfied when you put all in something and you get something out of it.
Exactly.
If you don't put all in something and you expect something out of it,
Yep.
what you get. And so, you know, that's the thing I realized. Money don't make the happiness. If you're not happy now, you know, you can get my money or you can get Diddy money. You're not gonna be happy because the problems still gonna be there. It's the same problems. Oh, he don't like me. She don't like me. My family, you know, this. I'm sick. It's same.
Yeah.
It's the same. Right? You know, ain't nothing changing. Don't get me wrong. Money do great because guess what? It make the air smell better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, make the bills easier to get paid. But that don't mean you're gonna be happy with it.
Right.
I've been depressed with money.
Yeah.
I have. That's another story.
Oh,
but I've been depressed with money.
Yeah.
You know, because it's more important things than that. My daughter's more important. You know, that custody battle that I went through, that I was way more depressed. You know, at the end of the day, I didn't give a about money. I almost lost my puppy business. I didn't give a about it. I didn't give a money. You know, money it wasn't doing shit to help me.
Yeah.
You know, it can't get my daughter back custody.
Yeah.
Not at the moment. You know, and so
Money's
that's what people gotta. Yeah, it's a tool. And if you don't know how to use it, then you know it is what it is, and that's what people don't know. They don't know how to use it. You know, it's not everything. It's not everything. It's not everything. So much more shit can make you happy, right? If you're happy with money or without money, think about how much happier you're gonna be with money. If you're happy without money, you're gonna be stupid happy with money, or might find it easier to be happy without money, because now you don't got them family members coming out the woodworks and all that. Right, you know, and who you can trust and who you can't trust. Because when you ain't got shit, you ain't got to worry about trusting nobody. Because they ain't not trying to get nothing from you. But when you got shit, you don't know who the you can trust.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's always going to be more problems. So you think, okay, having this is going to solve this. It's not how it works, you know? And so that's the biggest thing. So do you need to get money? Of course, you need to get money. The air smells better. I already said that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you think it's everything, then no, it's not. You know, if it's gonna end your sorrows for how insecure you feel about whatever, no, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
You still gonna be insecure about the same shit. You know, at the end of the day, you just gotta have money and be insecure.
There you go.
Ain't shit changing really. Yeah. So you know, that's the best way I could kind of sum it up. You know, I've been through all this shit. I've seen a lot of shit, guys. I got stories that, you know, we haven't had time.
We're going to get into it in some.
We ain't had time, guys. It's juice. It's juice. You know, I call it tea juice. You know, it's so much juice coming. You know, it's people that's going to be mad at me. They're going to be mad. But it's a story that happened. And, you know, I got to tell it. You know, it's beefs that got, you know, I didn't even get a chance to elaborate in certain situations that I brought up in this interview. Right? Yeah. But we'll get into them. Yeah, you know, we'll get into them, you know, and guys, what I want you all to understand is, you know, I started with nothing. Nothing. I grew up in the projects. I was raised in the project. I moved to Atlanta, right? Still basically Adamville, still basically the projects or whatever. You know, the statistic of me supposed to be doing what I'm doing is relatively low. What got me here is mindset, not brain, mindset. The mindset is what got me here. I didn't understand. You know, if it wasn't for probably a friend, maybe I would have never got the mindset. I can't say. I don't know. Or whatever. So, you know, change the people you hang around. You know, if you're hanging around people that stop hanging around these people. Stop. Change the circle of people. Figure out what your goal is, what you want to do, and work towards it every single day. That's all I can tell you. And so you're gonna get some setbacks, guys. With this puppy business, I've had major setbacks. I've been turned down for buildings, right? I've lost IG account, all types of stuff. You know, I don't even want to go into everything, but I've had all types of stuff happen, right? To where, you know, it did make me feel like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But we stayed through, we persevered, and right? And now nobody can take this business away from me. Nobody can. Nobody can stop it. Nobody can touch it.
Yeah.
Nobody can touch it, because you want to know why? I sell rare dogs that people want. Even if nobody on this podcast wants a puppy, I didn't do this podcast to my dogs. My dogs, they're still going to sell, because the industry that wants them is separate from what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right? You know, at the end of the day. And so that's how easily anybody can create a business, right? We live in an age where, look what we're doing right now. Right, look what we're creating a podcast, right? It's generating money, right? It's just stuff people can do. Anybody can do this, right? And so we have to realize that we have more opportunities than what our parents had.
Yeah.
You know, so let's not complain about what we weren't taught, and let's just get back to, you know, what, you know, is relevant in the world and what can help us out. And so a lot of people, they shy away from social media. I don't mess with it.
Right.
But they don't think about, okay, well, let me try to make some money from it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so same people with credit. Oh, I don't got no credit because their credit could be straight. I don't want no credit. If you ain't got 5 credit cards, you ain't got no portfolio for credit cards.
Right.
You need 5 credit cards to have a portfolio. How you think you're going to get to 800? You can get to 800 without no 5 credit cards.
Yeah.
You're not good. There's only 3 people trust you.
Right.
With money.
Right.
That ain't no 800.
Right. Exactly.
Ain't no 780. There ain't no none of that. Only 3 people trust you with money.
Yeah.
And you see multiple people trust you with high amounts of money. That's credit.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? People don't understand that.
Yeah.
Or whatever. You know, they don't know how to work towards their goals. They don't know how to work towards, you know, people want to start a business, but they're scared of credit. But, you know, you can use that to start your business.
That's coming.
You know?
It's a future episode. No, definitely.
We're
We're going to dive deeper into these.
But you know why you can't use it? Because you were scared of it all your life. You know? And so I just, you know, feel like, you know, a lot of information we wasn't taught. A lot of MLM gurus, you know, they claim to be gurus, but they're not doing half the stuff that successful people do. And so you need to question your upline. See if you got an Amex. See if your upline got an Amex. If your upline ain't got no Amex, he's not getting in no club, no club. He can't go to the airport and get into no club, no lounge.
All the lounges. Yeah.
You ain't getting into no lounges. Your credit is. Let's just keep it real. Yeah. You can't get in no airport lounge, bro. What's wrong with your credit? You feel me? You can't get in this lounge, bro. You ain't got access to this lounge. Yeah. You know, see, that's what black people don't know about. Yeah. Black people know about these Jordans and these Versace and all this other shit. I've been in the Delta lounges. But yeah, they don't know about that Delta lounge. They don't know about that shit. Right. They don't know that this card gets you in there. Yeah. They don't know that this card gets you first class. Then they gotta pay for it. You know? And so, just shit that I wasn't taught.
We're going to get into it, though, right? Like I say, we got future episodes. I know you all got a lot of this conversation with Ray Arnold, my brother, my friend. Over a decade came on here. We talked about a lot of different stuff. So appreciate you again, Ray, bro. Appreciate you. We got more coming as well. This is just the first episode. And being you got something out of this episode, make sure you bang that like button. If you're new here, make sure you bang that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and we'll be dropping a lot more free content just like this. Also, feel free to comment any of your biggest takeaways in the comment section. Was you rocking with this conversation with myself and Ray Arnold? I'd love to know. And also, I'd love to know what you got out of it, right? Hit the comments. Feel free to share this around with anyone else you feel could benefit. This episode will be on YouTube, but also if you love to listen to audio, we're on Apple and Spotify as well. Just look up the Rise of the 1%. And with that said, Ray, like I said, appreciate you again, brother.
No problem. Make sure y'all go check that out. Rise of the 1%.
There we go.
YouTube channel.
Yep.
YouTube
Check
channel for the full interview.
Absolutely.
For the full interview. Check that out.
There you go. With that said, have a great one on purpose.